Han Sung-hyun has been locked in his room for 6 months. He tried to leave, but he just didn't have the courage. The reason for this goes deeper than his weak legs. He tried hard, but it was useless. The culprits are those damned awakened people. Nobody knows the exact reason, but some people awaken abilities. When that happens, exactly 24 hours later, they are teleported to another world. To this day, few people have returned alive. You have to survive a year there to come back, and it seems time there passes 10 times slower than on Earth. Because of this, some cursed people use their remaining 24 hours to commit crimes with their powers. Since they know they're going to another world and will probably die anyway, one of these people did just that, and Han Sung-hyun's parents died in the process. His legs also died that day. Now, 6 months later, the system appeared for him too. The blue window stated that his awakened ability is called Avatar, and that in 24 hours, he would be teleported. Han Sung-hyun panicked. He couldn't walk, so he would definitely die in that other world. How could he survive 10 years there? He didn't want to, but he put on suitable clothes. Damn it, he couldn't go. Then, an idea popped into his mind. Was his ability actually any good? He tried his best and activated the avatar, making a clone appear right in front of him. It was confusing because his mind was split between himself and the clone. Seeing two perspectives at the same time made him dizzy, and the timer marking 5 minutes left him terrified. However, he looked at the clone and had a devilish idea. Isn't that guy him? What if he sent the copy to the other world? Without thinking about whether it was right or wrong, Han Sung-hyun pushed the clone into the portal, and to his surprise, it worked. The clone was teleported. When the copy was in the other world, he shared senses with it. Damn, this was confusing. He couldn't control himself and his head hurt. It was like seeing two things at once. Terrified by the sensation, he decided to dismiss the clone, and suddenly the feeling stopped. He rushed to the bathroom and threw up everything. He had escaped that world, which was great, so he summoned the avatar again. It appeared, and Han Sung-hyun noticed that he was actually quite handsome. But what could he do with this useless ability? He couldn't control two bodies. Then, a notification left him stunned. The system said he completed the mission of returning to Earth alone, without using the karma shop. A new achievement was unlocked, and now he could use the dimensional portal to travel to the other world once a day. Now he had almost 2 million karma. This karma is paid according to your impact in the other world, whether good or evil. If he became famous for being a hero, he'd earn karma. If he became a big powerful villain, he'd earn it too. He wondered if the way he won was against the rules. The clone died, and when he remade it on Earth, the system understood that he had won and returned. But he didn't care. It wasn't like he did it on purpose. Han Sung-hyun decided to try the karma shop. The improvement skill seemed like a good choice and cost only 10,000 points. He was rich. The status he received was recovery. When he activated it, he felt something react in the lower part of his body. It was lower than he expected. It was his useless legs. They started to hurt, tingle, and regenerate. The reason for his reclusive life was being healed. They weren't just cured, they became strong. With the excitement, he couldn't resist. There had to be more good stuff in the shop. He decided to evolve the avatar ability. He noticed that now the clone was much more buff. And the best part, now his consciousness was divided into two distinct parts. It was literally a clone he could give orders to. Another good thing was that he didn't feel the copy's pain. I need a cleaner. Clone, you have a job, he thought. Something even more incredible happened. Now he could make 2 clones. He needed to name these guys. He couldn't just call them clones. Since he was bad with names and liked ketchup, he decided the first clone would be called Hans and clone number 2 would be called Heinz. Now they had to work. One would go to the other world to explore, and the other would clean the house and train. As for Han Sung-hyun, he would do the most important job. He would use the clone's body to go outside and overcome his trauma. When Heinz stepped out and saw the sunlight, Han Sung-hyun felt no anxiety or fear. This must be the passive effect of the avatar, the mind core skill. Each of the bodies has its own abilities. Now, it was time to see what Hans was going through in the other world. A wild animal caught his scent and decided he would make a great meal. The panther attacked quickly, and he only had his small sword to fight. Han Sung-hyun isn't good at combat, but it's much better to fight without the fear of risking his own body. With a lot of effort, Hans managed to defeat the panther. When he recovered his energy, he noticed there was a village near his location. A bald guy said his name was Malcolm and that he was the village chief. He stated that all travelers were welcome. He also said the young man must be strong to travel alone, and if he wanted, he could sleep in the village to continue his journey during the day. While they walked, the old man asked questions and discovered he was a person from another world. When Hans got to the room given to him, he felt happy to talk to someone after being stuck at home for 6 months. However, while he slept peacefully, an unknown person broke into the room. Back at the real protagonist's house, Han Sung-hyun was celebrating his new life. He was eating while Heinz trained to the limit in the room next door. When Han Sung-hyun tried to access Han's controls in the other world, he realized his avatar was dead. But how was that possible? He was in a peaceful place. All the avatar's characteristics were sent to him, and from the memories received, it must have been that old man. He wasn't as nice as he seemed. Something abnormal happened. When Han Sung-hyun tried to connect with his dead avatar, he succeeded. Back in the other world, old Malcolm and another person were lamenting that this adventurer was just average. He had passed through the forest at night by pure luck. The level he reached was, at most, an elite skeleton. When Han Sung-hyun connected, he discovered that old Malcolm had killed Hans and turned him into an undead. Now, his avatar is a skeleton and possesses abilities of that class. Looking around, he realized this had happened to several people. They must all be tricked adventurers. A person entered the room. It was one of the guys who were at the tavern the day before. The man stared at the skeleton. Maybe he noticed something, but he just ordered the skeleton to go to the right place, along with the others. A strange force made Hans's body obey the order. He knew he could resist, but doing so now would reveal his identity. This clone has the mana affinity ability, so he could feel and understand the force controlling his body. Hans feels he can control this power. After a week of Hans being infiltrated and training, he finally mastered the Dark Mage's magic. He controlled one of the undead. It wasn't perfect at first. For now, Hans can only move one undead at a time. When he noticed the usual rat was nearby, he finally managed to capture the animal. He had been trying to catch the creature for a week. He killed the rat and turned it into a zombie. Now, with this, he can leave the room and explore the surrounding area.
The little one begins its work sniffing around. Then it goes to that subordinate who is opening a door. It is locked with a padlock, so Hans, in the body of the mouse, thinks of following him. As soon as the door is opened, an absurd power emanates from there. Then the mouse decides to enter, but as it walks, it feels that it is getting more dangerous. Later, the complaining young man talks to another member. He grumbles to his friend that he feels his energy being drained. He also complains about the watch duty that is getting on his nerves. After hearing everything he needed, the mouse is already on its way out, and it sniffs to find another place to observe. But suddenly, something sharp pierces its body. The poor thing didn't even have time to react, and soon beside it appears someone. It was that old man, the leader of the village. He approaches the animal and realizes it was a dead zombie rat. He wonders if this happened because of black magic. As he is leaving, he comments on a place nearby where there is a lot of black magic. Approaching his two subordinates, he asks which of them was responsible for the warehouse. Meanwhile, the skeleton avatar says goodbye to his little friend Alfred. With eyes overflowing with mana, he declares that he will take revenge. Soon it is another day. The complaining young man kicks the door to where the zombies are. Irritated, he points at one of the zombies, demanding to enter the line, and he walks up to it. Once there, he punches its face, knocking the poor thing down. As if that weren't enough, he crouches down to insult it, and he grabs its few strands of hair, starting to pull. Lifting the creature's head, he recognizes who it was. The young man lets out an evil laugh, saying that now the zombie cannot react. Then he releases its head, slamming it hard against the ground. As he leaves, the man mocks when he hunted the villagers. On the ground, the zombie groans. Next, the young man approaches a woman in the same condition and claims to be the zombie's wife. What he didn't expect was that the undead would come up from behind to bite him. Startled, the young man puts his hand on his neck. He keeps ordering the zombie to obey him, but it doesn't happen. So he opens a magic circle to gain control over it. But from behind, another zombie grabs him, covering his mouth. The young man starts to sweat cold, and looking around, he realizes that all of them are approaching, ready to attack him. The protagonist's avatar stands back, as he is the one controlling them. For him, this is the beginning of revenge. At the village entrance, the other clone, Heinz, arrives saying he is looking for his brother. The men are preventing him from entering. But from a distance, the old man approaches, noticing the commotion. He introduces himself as the village chief. However, when he comes face to face with Heinz, he is startled by the resemblance. Thus, the clone introduces himself as Hans's twin brother. Meanwhile, the skeleton avatar stands before a great power. He used his brother Heinz to distract the old man and thus managed to enter the secret warehouse. Right in the middle of the room, there is a purple crystal from which energy emanated. The skeleton realizes that it is absorbing the black energy from the others, and looking around, he sees some of the undead moving. Unlike the others he already knew, he notices that these are strong. However, even so, he decides to take that crystal. Grabbing the item, he brings it to his chest, and a great explosion of energy erupts. Meanwhile, Heinz continues his mission to distract the others. He is explaining to the old man that, being twins, they can sense where the other is. But at that moment, a noise catches everyone's attention. Immediately, the old man transforms and orders the others to finish off Heinz. Then they prepare to attack with their spears. What they didn't expect was that the young man had already escaped from there. In the warehouse, the skeleton, now with the black energy in his body, hears many negative thoughts. He even tries to filter them, but there are still too many. Letting out a scream, he says he can't bear it without going insane. Thus, a new purple explosion occurs, and after a while his body seems to have accepted the malignant energy. Now his body had become much more powerful. With that crystal, he gained wisdom and talent for using magic. In another part, the complaining young man continues grumbling while standing guard. But at that moment, his boss calls his attention through telepathy. He is ordered to look at the purple fragment to see if everything is alright. Responding to the order, he turns and says he will check. And so through the bars, he starts shouting, asking if they can hear him. Around the body of that zombie, a circle appears. Meanwhile, the guard continues shouting, drawing attention. When he realizes the zombie is already very close, trying to grab him. In fact, they were all doing this at the protagonist's command. He had become the leader and instilled fear with his strange face. In disbelief, the young man panics, wondering how the skeleton could speak. And to try to defend himself, he charges his hand with his power. Soon after, he throws it through the bars, trying to hit the undead. But what he didn't expect was that they would manage to break down the door right after. Emerging there, the skeleton avatar says that the young man was very rude, and as he continues walking, he prepares to use the black energy. Even without knowing it, for Hans, it was quite easy to deal with it. Outside, the other men encounter a great explosion, and emerging from the debris, the skeleton clone orders the zombies to advance. They run off to carry out the order to eliminate the humans. From a distance, Hans watches the fight, but his skeletons and zombies were losing. That's because the old man was there to stop them. He approaches with a furious look. Now face to face, the skeleton asks if the old man remembers him, and bringing his hand to his chest, he shows that the crystal is now part of him. The evil energy begins to emanate, thus showing that he can use it. Furious, the old man says he never imagined a skeleton like him could withstand the power, and raising his hand to the sky, he activates his power, saying he would eliminate him. Then he throws all that energy directly at Hans. Unfortunately, it ended up hitting the bones of his arm. Seeing his arm on the ground, the skeleton complains about the lack of manners. But the old man is not joking around and is already preparing another attack. While throwing his power against the protagonist, he says he was close to becoming the most powerful. Thus, he also takes the opportunity to activate the Thorn of Darkness. However, Hans easily manages to block it with a shield, and he even shouts to the old man that he wouldn't be able to use the fragment. Attacking again, the leader says he will finish off the skeleton and use him as an experiment. However, Hans is already losing patience with the old man. For a moment, the leader stops and asks if Hans knew anyone there, and when he least expects it, some thorns begin to emerge behind him. Acting quickly, he manages to activate his shield, and he is even impressed as the skeleton was already able to use a high level of magic. Stretching out his hand, he says he won't waste any more time and activates the Pact of Destruction. Meanwhile, in the village, the other henchmen continue to fight, and one of them notices that his friend is acting strange. All the servants present were having their souls drained. The old man was managing to do this to summon a crown. Soon after, he places it on his head and calls it the Crown of the Broken. Hans realizes that he has increased his power using the souls of his subordinates. Without further delay, the leader begins to charge his final power. His eyes change color, turning black. But before he could really attack, he is hit in the chest. As Hans was already out of patience, he wanted to end this quickly. And approaching with his terrifying face, he says that thanks to the old man, he learned dark magic. At this point, the old man had already come to terms that this would be his end, and soon after, he falls to the ground. Looking at the sky, he tells his deceased little mouse that he avenged him, and he finishes by saying to rest in peace. Changing scenes to a religious castle, a cleric is praying before a statue. Her expression is one of desperation. Then she goes to the bishop's room to call for him. The priest appears and asks if she has finished praying. In a panic, the woman asks him to contact the other members. She tells the priest that she felt the presence of the immortal king. Without delay, the bishop runs off to warn the others. This makes the cleric remember the chaos that this immortal has already caused, and looking at the sky, she promises that she won't let this happen again. Looking at the battlefield, the destruction seemed enormous. Almost all the undead were destroyed. With a confident smile, the Avatar thought that the best part of being a necromancer was being able to use the bodies to replenish his troops. Before anything else, he needed to take care of his broken arm. As he stared at the body of an old subordinate, an idea came to his mind. Without thinking twice, he ripped the arm off the fallen skeleton. Soon after, he activated his super recovery ability to connect the new limb to the body. When he realized that the recovery was perfect, he decided it was time to rebuild the army. He then tried to use his power on the body of one of the skeletons to make it his subordinate. Evil wisdom guided him as he channeled the magic into the body. Using the power of the fragment of the immortal king in his chest, he continued the spell. The evil energy flowed intensely to contaminate the remaining magic in the skeleton. To his surprise, the body exploded into several pieces. Confused, Hans realized that the resurrection attempt had failed. He then turned to the bodies of weaker zombies and skeletons. After a few attempts, he finally understood how to reanimate the dead. Looking at the old man's body, Hans planned what he would do next. To extract information, he tried to turn him into an undead. During the process, something unexpected happened. Surprised, he realized that the old man's body had no soul. In the man's chest, he found a magical extraction circle. Even without a soul, he decided that he could still use the body in his plans. He then created an elite undead, with consciousness and fighting power. He channeled his evil energy to contaminate the magic of the body. With the remaining thoughts, he planted a new ego in the corpse. His eyes shone with power as he completed the spell. Reborn, a dark mage rose, awaiting orders. Hans named the new servant Malcolm and demanded obedience. With a punch, he tested his loyalty, and Malcolm simply agreed. The protagonist decided he would torment the servant for his crimes. Called by his master, Malcolm responded with total enthusiasm. Suddenly, Hans noticed Malcolm's staff and found it very cool. He took the item for himself. He was now the new master of an army of bones. In the midst of the horde, he noticed that the zombie from before was there. He remembered that this zombie had helped in the revenge against that enemy of the village. To thank him for the help, he placed his hand on its head. Seeing the village in flames, he wished that the zombie could rest with his family. Returning to the land, Han was home, satisfied after a good meal. Curious, he took out his phone to check the price of gold. He remembered that the witch's village was full of treasures. Excited to see the spoils, he decided to summon Hans. In a flash, the skeletal avatar appeared right in front of him. Hans's evil energy oppressed Han, who was paralyzed with fear. In a panic, the young man shouted to cancel the summoning immediately. Gasping on the ground, he could hardly believe he had almost died right there. Not knowing what to do, he opened the Karma shop to strengthen his ability. In the Karma shop, Han realized he had more points than he expected. The system warned that his mental strength had exceeded the limit. With that, he gained the Serenity skill against mental attacks. Later, he stored several gold bars in bags. Next to Hans, he noticed that the new skill protected him from the evil aura. Happy, he found it curious how he always managed to get the skills he needed. And so he was excited to go sell the gold. The bags were full of coins and valuable jewels. At the gold buyer, everyone was shocked by the young man's fortune. Satisfied, he said goodbye to the store employees. To be cautious, he had hidden Hans in his shadow with magic. He even put a mask on the avatar but felt embarrassed by the choice. Thinking he had worried for nothing, he walked calmly down the street. Suddenly, a huge creature appeared, causing a great explosion. The monster and his accomplice shouted that they had hit the jackpot. Surprised by so much gold, the werewolf grabbed the bags to flee. His partner urged him on, and the two began to run away. On the way, Han appeared, shouting for someone to call the police. These villains were awakened ones who used their powers for crime. The protagonist remembered that there were guardians to protect civilians. The scene made him recall the explosion that marked his life forever. With a punch, the werewolf threw him to the ground violently. Fallen, Han thought that the guardians would soon track down the criminals. Trembling with fear, he felt powerless for not being able to do anything. The villains fled, certain they had time before help arrived. Worried, they searched for their partner, who should have been there. They found her lying on the ground, and the werewolf shouted her name. Desperate, he asked what had happened, and she pointed to the shadows. From there, Hans emerged, and the villain realized he was not a guardian. Although Han could do nothing, something changed. Shadowy hands emerged from the ground, catching the villains by surprise. Unlike Han, Hans could fight. A group was rushing, following the orders of a man. One of them was the leader of the guards, and they ran to catch the bandits. But when they arrived, they were shocked by what they saw. The villains were already defeated, leaving them confused about what had happened. With the werewolf already out of strength, they questioned who had faced them. By the way the enemies were sprawled out, the fight seemed recent. Then the guard ordered everyone to search the area immediately. On the ground, a trail of dark shadow quickly moved away from the location. The shadow connected to Han's feet. Outside, he stretched, feeling a great relief. Walking down the street, he commented that this situation was good for relieving stress. The scene shifts to Han's second avatar. He is excited, celebrating because he has finally reached his destination. Thus, he confirms that Malcolm's information was indeed correct. Confident, he announced his official debut in this new world. The place seemed strange, quiet, and empty. Walking through the streets, he wondered why the city was deserted. He even got irritated because no one cared about outsiders there. On the other side, he saw a man intimidating a young girl who was begging for time. The collectors demanded payment of 2 coins in just 3 days. Finding the scene cliché, he decided he would not get involved. But as he was passing by, the young girl was pushed, bumping into him. Startled, she apologized repeatedly, and Heinz interrupted her. Realizing he needed a guide, he asked if she knew the city well. Confused by the question, the young woman asks who he was. With a smile, he showed 2 coins and introduced himself as her future boss. Shocked, The girl accepted the coins to pay her debt. Already at night, the girl pointed to a large house, saying it was a good lodging. With a smile, the young woman named Diana asked if he liked the place. After learning about the debt, Heinz paid the girl and arranged a meeting for the next day. Lying down, he reflected that even though he had been deceived, he was doing a good deed. The bed was too uncomfortable to sleep. Hearing sneezing sounds, he went to the window to check. When he did this, he noticed that Diana was outside. She was happy to see him and greeted him. At breakfast, he asked her not to wait for him so early the next day. The girl agreed and called him a strange name, leaving Heinz irritated. Soon after, she pointed to the bread on his plate, asking if he was going to eat it. Our hero gave her the food, making the girl happy. The town they were in was Azanthu, a small village in the kingdom of Telia. As he was pulled by the guide, Heinz thought the place looked like a typical medieval town. On the wall, Heinz found a strange symbol scattered throughout the town. He commented that it didn't look like paint, and the girl said it was red liquid. Thoughtfully, Heinz said he didn't really believe that. Out of nowhere, Diana asked if he had eaten deer soup the day before. In her explanation, she said she knew because her sense of smell was very good. As they walked, the guide explained that the symbol belonged to the Varkolek organization that controlled the place. The girl was about to explain more, but suddenly she froze. Finding it strange, Heinz asked what was wrong, and she said it was the smell. Meanwhile, she remained still, focused. Excited, she shouted that it was the smell of fresh bread. Heinz even said that she had just had lunch, but she replied that she could hold on. The smell seemed to be coming from a dark alley, and soon after a person appeared, leaving red trails. Days later, the hero was waiting for Diana, worried about her delay. Suddenly, one of the collectors approached, calling him brother. The collectors got close to Heinz, saying they needed to talk. To avoid problems, the protagonist offered some silver coins. With a smile, he said it was to help maintain order in the town. At that moment, he noticed that one of them had the Varkolak symbol around his neck. He remembered Diana warning him to be careful with them. As they left, the men commented on the capture of a child. In shock, Heinz thought it could be Diana. Without hesitation, our hero drew their attention. He was already ready to fight if necessary, so he told them he was curious about something. But at that moment, Diana appeared calling for him. Curious, the collectors asked what he wanted to know. Nervous, Heinz made up that he wanted to know if the money was enough, and then he handed over the pouch with the rest, saying they could take everything. To disguise, he shouted at Diana for being late for the meeting. With a face full of anguish, Diana told him that her younger brother had disappeared. She even cried, saying he was getting better thanks to the food, but had now vanished. The protagonist remembered the collector's conversation and realized that the child was her brother. When Heinz told her about the conversation he overheard, the girl panicked. The avatar tried to calm her down, saying he would pay the ransom if necessary. Desperate, she said that what they really wanted was the fluid of life and not money. Confused, the hero asked why they would want that. The truth was revealed. The town was a food stock for vampires. Elsewhere, a powerful vampire noticed the strong smell of dark mana. He lamented not having taken the fragment of the immortal king earlier. Smiling, he said he knew where they were going and that he would get the fragment for himself very quickly. Diana explained that the Varkolak and all the other organizations were run by vampires. In tears, she said that even trying to escape the town, no one ever survived. The young woman lamented that they were just struggling to survive each day. Desolate on the ground, she believed that she and her brother would be devoured there. To make her react, Heinz held the girl's face and shook her hard. The protagonist said they didn't have time and asked where the boy had been taken. With tears in her eyes, Diana was startled to see that he really would help her. With a confident smile, the hero told her not to worry. He was determined to help the girl. The scene shifted to a tavern where the captors were playing and commenting on the easy money they had made. Suddenly, Heinz burst through the door loudly. Confused, the collector turned and asked who the hell he was. Recognizing him, he mocks, saying that Heinz has returned to donate more money. Outside, we see that he has already taken care of one of the members. While being held, he asks where they took the child they were talking about. But as he expected the guy wouldn't answer, he took a knife with him. Without waiting long, Heinz plunges the knife into the man's neck. Holding him tightly, he says he knows exactly what kind of trash they are. With hatred, our hero shouts that they are just trash. After taking down the first one, he warns that there are still 2 left. The other collector advances, irritated that Heinz is causing trouble. Confident, the protagonist prepares, recalling his skills. The other thugs from the tavern join the fight and attack him. One of them tries to hit Heinz from behind, but something goes wrong. The man is shocked to see that the blade cannot pierce him. With a punch, the protagonist takes down the second thug. Mocking, he reveals that he is wearing a stab-proof vest. The last collector advances with an axe, ready to attack. To the man's surprise, a magical barrier blocks the blow. Shocked, the man is hit by Heinz, who finishes off the third thug. The protagonist feels relieved to have brought several magical tools. Looking at the bodies, he comments that it was too easy. Suddenly, more thugs appear, drawn by the noise of the fight. Surrounded, the hero laments that his big mouth has gotten him into trouble. The fight continues, with Heinz counting each enemy he takes down. Breathless, he stands among the defeated, surprised by so many men. Wounded in the shoulder, he admits that he lost count in the chaos. His recovery ability kicks in, healing the wound instantly. With his foot on one of the thugs' faces, he demands to know where the captured boy is. The man on the ground threatens him, saying he will regret everything. He warns that his boss is coming to end Heinz's life. Thanking him for the information, the hero prepares to finish off the man. The scene shifts to a room, where a silhouette asks for Aaron. Crouched in the corner, little Aaron begs for his life. To calm the boy, Heinz says that his sister sent him to save him. Outside, a bat flies around the place. The creature lands on the window, watching them. A powerful voice echoes, questioning who dares to touch his food in the restaurant. With sharp claws, the vampire's hand emerges as he complains about the interruption to his meal. Emerging from the shadows, the creature stares at them, leaving Heinz frightened. The vampire threatens the two, saying they know what happens to those who challenge him. Protecting the boy, Heinz says he is just a stranger who was robbed by his thugs. Finding the story boring, the vampire creates a red sphere, saying he prefers boys as a meal. Then he unleashes his power, surrounding the two. Without wasting time, the protagonist grabs Aaron and shouts for them to run as fast as possible. Then, with fire on his body, he grabs the vampire, determined to eliminate him to protect the siblings. Taking advantage of the time he gained, he tells the little boy to flee. Impressed, the vampire comments on Heinz's speed. With a wicked smile, he advances, saying it will be a good warm-up. The protagonist tells Aaron to run and not look back, no matter what happens. Heinz tries to attack, but the vampire easily holds his sword. In a swift motion, the creature pierces him in the shoulder with its claws. Even wounded, he realizes that the difference in strength between them is very large. The vampire enjoys himself, saying that if he weren't playing, he would have already eliminated him. Not giving up, our hero tries a punch, but it is easily stopped. The vampire mocks, saying he will have to scrape his bones before eating him. Holding him high with his claws, the vampire declares the end of the resistance, and then prepares to bite, saying he will pay the price. With a magical item in his mouth, Heinz decides that if there is a difference in strength, they would end their lives together. An explosion of fire envelops the protagonist's body. The creature is startled to see that Heinz had a hidden fire magic tool. The protagonist reveals that he got the idea when he saw the alcohol spilled on the floor during the explosion. With a magical tool in hand, Heinz believed he could turn the tide. The vampire calls him crazy, warning that he would also burn to the end. With his arm on fire, the protagonist pushes him, shouting for him to disappear. Mocking, the vampire calls him a fragile piece of meat, and in anger, Heinz headbutts the enemy. He comments that his body will have no problems as he is resilient and recovers well. With his hair on fire, he screams that he is a very resilient delicacy. Desperate with the fire spreading, the vampire screams for him to stop. But with a single explosion, everything ends. The fire consumes everything, and Heinz, thrown to the ground, is impressed. With a smile on his face, he is surprised to still be alive, joking that being too strong is a problem. And there he reflects on everything that has happened. The mission to help the unhappy girl seemed to have been a success. Meanwhile, Diana and Aaron, now reunited, are desperate about the fire. The system warns that the avatar has lost its life and will need 7 days to return. In the meantime, Diana cleans shoes to earn money. With a smile, she thanks for the payment. The girl is relieved to have finished the job, but another person arrives. He asks if he can also be attended to, and she readily accepts. Suddenly, she recognizes him, and her eyes shine with joy. Diana hugs him, shouting that he is safe, emotional to see him well. With a smile, Heinz jokes that he wouldn't lose his life so easily. In fact, that was a lie, as the avatar had truly been eliminated this time. Days ago, at his home, the protagonist worries about the girl. To ensure she doesn't feel alone, he decides to operate a new avatar and names it Heinzu. The new clone's main characteristic is acceleration. With this avatar, he approaches Diana, hoping she won't notice the switch, and the girl truly believes he is the same as before. This is because the essence of his soul remains the same. Worried, Diana warns him that the vampires will hunt him relentlessly. With a smile, he reassures her, saying he has everything planned. He believes that with the power of the immortal King Hans, the vampires will not be a problem. In the room, Heinz realizes he needs to wait 10 days for the interdimensional transmission. Meanwhile, that bat approaches, transforming and attacking him. The vampire grabs him by the neck, accusing him of the chaos in the city. The creature claims that the traces in the forest lead directly to him, leaving Heinz terrified. The vampire wonders how an outsider is in the territory of one of his vampires who lost their life. With no strength to react, Heinz realizes he is facing another powerful monster. The vampire is intrigued as he does not sense any dark magic aura or smell of his relative. Held captive, Heinz tries to pretend to be confused, saying he was sleeping and knows nothing. With a wicked smile, the creature doubts his words and prepares to act. Thus, it bites his neck. After tasting the liquid, it steps back while Heinz feels pain. The avatar is being transformed, and even the system warns of the alteration. Now transformed, he gains a new lineage ability, while the vampire repeats the question. Using his authority, the vampire pressures him about the challenge oath, while his healing ability evolves. Feeling the red liquid forcing him to obey, Heinz bows and responds to Lord Wurak that he is just a traveler. However, with a smile, he thinks he can simply ignore that instinct. His mind core ability acts as a filter, blocking the submission instinct. Suspicious, the vampire turns, telling Heinz to follow him, as they have something to do. With the plan in action, the protagonist decides to accompany him to gather more information. The scene shifts to the Varkoslak clan headquarters. Inside, other vampires greet Lord Wurak, while Heinz follows closely. Other vampires comment on Heinz, questioning why Lord Wurak accepted someone so inferior. Suddenly, a female vampire hugs him, excited to see a new inferior after so long. The vampire, named Rosilika, asks his name. Uncomfortable, Heinz introduces himself, and she tries to cheer him up by offering a drink. To avoid raising suspicions, he accepts the cup of liquid she offers. Upon drinking, he feels an overwhelming thirst for red liquid, even with his filtering ability. Determined not to give in, he blocks the taste and smell, drinking it all at once. After finishing, he praises the drink, leaving Rosilika enchanted. She jokes with him, and to change the subject, Heinz asks what an inferior means. Surprised, the vampire realizes he does not know the classes of vampires. Rosilika explains the hierarchy, from inferiors to clan leaders and saints. The progenitor, to whom everyone must obey, is seen as a figure of faith for the vampires. At the top of the stairs, Lord Wurak calls everyone's attention for an important announcement. With everyone gathered, he gets straight to the point, announcing that the fragments of the immortal king have disappeared. While the subordinates are surprised, the leader explains that it vanished near the city. Confused, Heinz asks about these fragments of the immortal king. Rosilika explains that dark wizards cultivated the fragments in a village. After being ordered to investigate, Rosilika and Heinz walk through the city. Under a parasol, he feels weak in the daylight. Rosilika complains that bringing their fragments here was useless. Surprised, Heinz asks if they also have fragments stored. She confirms, saying that the plan was to merge them. Seeing a chance, he believes that only one vampire keeps the fragment. Grabbing Rosilika, he asks where the fragments are hidden. With a laugh, she mocks him, saying that someone like her wouldn't know. Later, while talking to Diana, she says that she might know the location. He is surprised, but the girl confirms that she really knows where the fragments are. That night, they stop to eat, and Heinz questions the girl if what she said was true. The girl confirms, but says she is not absolutely sure. She recounts that a year ago, she worked cleaning a tomb. Every Friday, members of the Varkolak visited the stone chamber. Inside the place, she always felt a terrible and malevolent smell. Intrigued, he says it's worth investigating this lead. Thanking her for the information, he asks the two to stay hidden. But before, Diana holds his hand and comments that his smell is different. With a smile, he says that her nose cannot be fooled and shows his teeth. Shocked, the girl realizes that he has transformed into a vampire. Worried, she holds his hand, offering help. With courage, she says that he can drink a little of her red liquid. She warns him not to overdo it, leaving the protagonist speechless. Irritated by her boldness, he flicks her forehead. Heinz asks her to stop talking and just tell him the location. In a cemetery, a scream is heard. Inside a chamber, a wounded man is threatened by a vampire. This was Tyapol, and he challenges the young man to strike him with the sword to gain his freedom. Even weak, the man struggles to lift the sword and fight. With a scream of fury, he charges to attack the vampire. The creature easily stops the blow, finding the attack vulgar. Using his power, the vampire binds him with tentacles of red fluid. The man becomes completely immobilized, with no chance of escape. The tentacles pierce his body, sucking all the liquid that was in him. Bored, Tyapol complains that the fight was very dull and uninteresting. He orders his servant to clean up the mess and bring a new sacrifice. The servant obeys his master's orders and begins to remove the lifeless body. While dragging the body, he feels something strange and asks who is there. From the shadows, a group of skeletons emerges and attacks the servant. Surprised, Tyapol wonders how those filthy corpses got in. Thus, he orders his servants to attack the skeletons. From the ground, a blue flame rises and more skeletons appear. Suddenly, sharp crystals strike the vampire and his servants. Trapped, he questions whether the enemy is a necromancer of the challenge oath. Tyapol demands to know how the invader discovered that secret place. From the shadows, Hans appears holding a sphere of blue energy. Seeing that he won't get answers, the vampire decides not to waste any more time. With red eyes, he threatens to leave only Hans's head. In an instant, Tyapol shatters the skeletons with his speed. But none of this shakes the skeleton Hans. From his own body, the avatar creates sharp bone spikes. The hero challenges the vampire to try to fulfill his threat of leaving only his head. Thus, those spikes head towards the enemy. Outside, another vampire arrives while skeletons attack the servants. Taiapol notices his companion and asks for help to defeat the skeleton. However, as he walks, something attacks him. He realizes that his own companion Heinz has bitten him. The vampire calls him a fool, not understanding the sudden betrayal. A dark energy begins to emanate from the protagonist's hand. Recognizing the dark magic, he suspects an alliance with the Demilic. Horrified, he cannot believe that the two could be together. He screams that drinking the red liquid of his kind is a terrible sin. With all his sullied liquid, the vampire falls to the ground. Heinz says that mental corruption does not work on him. By drinking the red liquid, he gains the ability of fluid magic. He could break the barrier, but there isn't enough time for that. With no other option, he decides that he will crush it. With a powerful attack, the sarcophagus shatters in an explosion. Looking inside, the two avatars find what they were looking for. There was the second fragment of the immortal king, pulsating with power. Hans prepares to absorb the power of the second fragment. A wave of negative thoughts hits him with full force. Even with his mental filter, the energy of the fragment is too much. To resist, the protagonist focuses all the power of his clones on Hans. Wirak arrives and wonders if it is already too late to intervene. Seeing a figure in the sky, he orders his men to attack. Hans is hit directly but continues holding the energy. With a counterattack, he launches a blast of power at the vampires. Wirak observes the scene, shocked by the imposing form of the skeleton. The system alerts that his regeneration has evolved into immortality. With the new power, Hans evolves from Demilic to Arch-Lich. Nearby, a knight sees the purple smoke and finds the occurrence strange. His servant recognizes the location as the city of Azanthu. Upon touching the ashes, he decides to return and report the phenomenon. He realizes that this is not ordinary ash, but something more sinister. Amidst the destruction, Wirak recognizes a sign of the immortal king. Impressed, he notes that the enemy's power has increased tenfold. With the fragment, Hans becomes an Arch-Lich and gains new abilities. He now possesses evil wisdom and forbidden knowledge. The avatar inherits all the secrets and knowledge of dark magic. Hans creates a purple smoke and disappears, leaving the vampires confused. Wirak wonders what the plan behind that trick is. Before they could retreat, a shadow attacks one of the vampires. Shocked, Wirak sees his servant being violently thrown away. Worried, he questions whether this is the power of the Arch-Lich. Suddenly, dark spikes pierce Lord Wirak's body. Wounded, he screams in pain as Hans says he is quite strong. The avatar calls him a bag of red liquid, leaving Wirak irritated. The vampire wonders how Hans endured the evil of the fragment. He reveals that he is not alone, and Heinz's shadow appears to bite him. Thus, the two avatars manage to eliminate the leader. The system alerts that his lineage has evolved to the pure class. Now stronger, he plans to devour other vampires to evolve. The remaining vampires flee, unsure of what to do after the defeat. They lament the loss, saying that the opponent was too strong. Pirita feels the magic in the air, noticing the great power of the enemy. With the sun rising, they decide to retreat and call for reinforcements. Far away, one of the human henchmen flees desperately. Hidden, he curses the vampires for being easily defeated. Suddenly, Hans's shadow appears and grabs one of his arms. Hans stays in the city to deal with the rest of the Varkolak members. Meanwhile, Heinz has hired merchants to take the brothers out of the city. On the way, he prepares 2 steaks in a frying pan. The brothers are amazed to see the special steak ready. Happy, they thank him and say the food is delicious. He realizes that now, far from danger, they are much happier, and thus he confirms with Diana the address of her uncle in Lapis. The girl feels insecure, but Heinz tells her not to worry. He thinks that if everything goes wrong, he can give them good money. With a smile, he realizes how much he has changed since arriving there. Lost in thought, the brothers call him back to reality. Worried, Diane asks if he is low on red liquid. He laughs and says he is fine, as he has already fed on the vampires. Meanwhile, Hans transforms the bodies of vampires into undead. The avatar opens a portal and sends his new creatures inside. With his new powers, he thinks of creating a subspace on Earth, but he did not expect that some vampires would appear. They are very angry and question why he is still in the city. He introduces himself as Ovor and asks if Hans is part of the challenge oath. With a smile, the protagonist confirms. Ovor accuses him of stealing the fragment and destroying the hideout, and soon after he draws his scythe, ready for battle. With a shout, the vampire charges, declaring that Hans will end here. He attacks with his scythe, but our hero escapes just in time. Suddenly, he emerges from the darkness on the ground. The avatar moves quickly, dodging the blow by a hair's breadth. Seeing his power, he realizes that a pure one is not an easy opponent. Suddenly, a red barrier forms around the area. Ovor warns that the clan's mages have already set a trap. Hans knows he can break the barrier, but he needs time. Attacking again, the vampire says he will crush his skull and take the fragment. With no way out, the skeleton says he has only one option left. With a dramatic speech, he declares the elimination of the vampires. To escape, the Avatar decides to make a villainous exit. Before being caught, Han cancels the summoning and Hans disappears. Confused, the vampires find the scene pathetic and nonsensical. Suddenly, silver arrows fall from the sky, killing the clan's mages. Ovor recognizes the weapons as the sacred arrows of the paladins. One of the servants warns that the situation has become even more complicated. The paladins of the Church of God have surrounded the tomb and are advancing. Irritated, he realizes that the Lich delayed them on purpose and vows to eliminate the skeleton. Back in his apartment, Han celebrates that his avatar survived. Han remembers the embarrassing speech his avatar made. With a red face, he screams in shame, unable to believe what he said. He throws himself on the bed, brooding over that cliché villain speech. He wonders why he said that, thinking he has gone crazy. Upon further reflection, he admits that he felt a bit proud. After all, he faced vampires and saved a girl and a city, and that made him feel like a hero. Stretching, he decides to check his karma points, and thus he accesses the shop, hoping for a great reward. Shocked, he sees that he has over 700,000 karma points. He believes that causing discord between the wizards and the vampires helped. With so many points, he decides to enhance his unique ability. A blue light surrounds him, and the limit for summoning avatars increases. Curious, he wonders if the new persona ability is like the mental core. With a smile, he laughs, satisfied with his new acquisitions. The persona ability uses an avatar to contain his emotions. Han understands that the system has given him the ability he needed. The memories of the other world make him reflect on his life. Trapped in his room for 2 years, he felt disconnected. For him, everything was just a game, far from real life. In reality, he was still isolated in his dark room. With a serious look, he faces the reality he has long avoided. But now all the negative emotions he suppressed have come to the surface. He turns to his avatar and calls it by name. He decides to transfer all his bad feelings to the avatar. After the process, he feels revitalized, but not empty. Worry, he wonders if Hans will be okay with his emotions. The avatar says that pain and despair no longer bother him. Surprised, the protagonist notices that the avatar's tone of voice has changed. Hans laughs and wonders if an avatar with emotions will have a personality. Suddenly, Han hears a loud explosion coming from outside. Startled, he wonders what is happening in the city. From the window, he sees smoke and fears it is another villain attack. He tries to convince himself that it is not his problem, but he seems tense. Hans confronts him, asking if he needs a reason to fight. With a confident smile, the avatar approaches its master. After transferring the emotions, he realizes he was just avoiding himself. He admits that deep down, he wants to eliminate villains, but lacks the courage. In a chaotic world, the lawless are everywhere. With a new mask, the avatar declares that he will become the law. Elsewhere, 2 guards complain about the terrorist attacks. They wonder why reinforcements have not yet arrived. Watching from afar, the avatar notices that the faction's villains have united. That's why he decides he won't leave empty-handed. The spheres in his hands open, revealing a giant blue eye. The avatar sends the magical eyes to watch over the darkness. They float through the city, searching for hidden sinners. In an alley, a man asks for an ashtray while smoking. It turns out these guys were going to use a boy as an ashtray. One of the magical eyes observes the scene closely, unnoticed, as the boy pleads for them to stop. In a house, a woman and her child are threatened by a man. A magical eye watches the aggressor about to strike with a belt. Elsewhere, a thief breaks a window to invade a store. The magical eye observes the criminal filling his bag with items. With his eyes everywhere, the avatar sees all the crimes. Suddenly, Hans appears and grabs the thief by the neck. The avatar also attacks the aggressors, causing overwhelming trauma. He appears to the men in the alley, ready to punish them. The avatar threatens them, telling them to remember that day. He also threatens them, saying that if he becomes evil again, they will meet in the darkness. And so they all learn a lesson. Getting used to his new power, the avatar desires even more. Surrounded by his watchful eyes, he decides he needs to clean the city more. With overwhelming power, he vows to purify the place. Satisfied, the avatar celebrates having cleaned the city all night long. He realizes that the Eye of Darkness has clear limitations. The power of the eye weakens with light and needs a new method. Unable to use the undead, he wonders what to do. Seeing some pigeons, he gets the idea to turn them into servants. A pigeon feather inspires him to create an invisible and mobile eye. Thus, he decides to use familiar magic to control animals. Hans tries to use the magic, but something seems to be going wrong. In an ancient goblin lair, he cannot control the pigeons. He realizes that by reducing the magic, the infectivity weakens. Frustrated, he understands the pain of programmers. After adjusting the magic, he wonders if it finally worked. Suddenly, the cute cat from before transforms into a four-eyed creature. Even after 3 weeks, he still hasn't achieved a good result. With his last test subject, he hopes that this time it will work. Irritated, Hans tries to hold the pigeon and adjust his magic, and so he casts his magic in its final version. Relieved, he holds the pigeon, believing he has succeeded. Pouring his magic over it, the bird flies before he even expected. The bird joins other pigeons, appearing normal on the outside, but when it gets close to the others, it starts to spread the magic. The other pigeons eat the infected body, falling into the trap. With red eyes, the pigeons become Hans' servants. Satisfied, he celebrates that the birds have become his eyes and ears. Hans commands us to fly and find his enemies throughout the city. In the middle of the forest, the pigeons encounter 2 men. The bishop was recalling the threatening words he heard in the tomb. The paladin Sir Tuscan approaches and informs that the vampires are not allies of the immortal king. However, Bishop Ladius says they need more clues, as the enemy is growing stronger. Suddenly, a golden crucifix begins to shine in his hand. Responding to the call, he confirms that Holiness has contacted him. The voice says that the presence of the immortal king has been detected again. Grateful, he promises that he will meet her expectations. In the cave, Hans checks if the information is being received. Suddenly, he notices something strange with his familiars in the forest. The animals seem to be scared and fleeing from something. One of his rats runs away in terror, leaving the avatar confused. He realizes that the animals have encountered humans, not monsters. Suspicious, he wonders if this is an enemy ambush. Through the vision of a pigeon, he sees several knights near the cave. Before he could react, the pigeon is hit by an arrow. The archer shouts, warning that Hans's tricks will not work. Sir Tuscan says that no evil can escape the divine gaze. With sword in hand, he orders the avatar to surrender and face judgment. Hans recognizes the emblem of the order he saw in Varkoslak. Knowing that divine power is a problem, he questions how they found him. Tuscan advances and attacks Hans with his sacred sword. The paladin did not ask him to speak. Irritated, he warns that he will not be deceived by words. Finding the knight stubborn, he thinks of a strategy. He decides to play around a bit and then try to escape the fight. Hans tries to use his magic, but the paladin blocks it. Tuscan says that such a clumsy trick will not fool him. The knight strikes him squarely with his sacred sword, and face to face, the skeleton asks if it is now a crime to punish the wicked. The paladin shouts that he has become like the villains by using forbidden power. Not understanding the logic, the avatar prepares for the next attack. He notices that, from the beginning, something has been interfering with his magic. With a punch, the paladin destroys Hans's mask in an explosion. Tuscan shouts for his men to prepare the sacred hymn. The choir members begin to sing with musical notes in the air. Hans feels his strength fading with the sacred music. He thinks of attacking but refuses to harm innocents. Suddenly, he sees the silhouette of the knight approaching. The paladin attacks and pierces Hans's chest with his sword. Seeing his chance, Tuscan shouts for his men to act. He orders everyone to restrain Hans, who curses in frustration. The choir members create chains of light to bind the avatar. Trapped, Hans laments having let his guard down for a moment. He is suspended in the air, totally paralyzed, unable to move or use magic. Seeing the choir, he understands that everything was done to stop him. Looking at the avatar, the paladin says they worked hard to capture him, and asks if he has given up resisting. But from the laughter he hears, Tuscan already imagines he has not. With a dark aura, Hans says there is no room for negotiation. Then he states that their paths diverge and challenges them to catch him. Tuscan refuses to let him escape and prepares an attack. A great burst of sacred light is fired in his direction. With a smile, he knows he will find his way out. Suddenly, Hans simply disappears into the air, canceling his summoning. Shocked, Tuscan cannot believe he escaped that prison. The scene shifts, and in his room, Han Seong-yin finds the situation boring. Lying on his bed, he realizes he now has many enemies. He has created problems with the Dark Faction Challenge Vow. He has also gotten into a big fight with the Varkoslak vampire clan. And to make matters worse, the powerful Great Divine Order is after him. Suddenly, the protagonist has a great revelation about everything. Looking at the karma shop, he understands the reason for the rewards. With wide eyes, he wonders if it is what he is thinking. He gains so much karma for attracting the attention of the entire continent. Deciding to let that go, he focuses on his original plan. In an alley, his new avatar observes the result of his research. The dark magic spreads when a controlled being touches another. Thus, his eyes and ears throughout the city continue to expand. Soon he believes that his familiars will cover the entire city of Seoul. Suddenly, he feels something unexpected. Through the vision of a cat, he wonders if the paladins have arrived, and thus realizes that it is a crime. Through a barrier, he hears a voice calling for help. A woman pleads for her life to a man holding a knife. Seeing a young man passing by, She screams for help, saying she was kidnapped. However, she becomes even more desperate when she sees that the young man ignored her. The man knocks her to the ground, saying it is useless to scream. With a painful smile, he threatens her with a knife, ordering her to scream. He explains that his ability prevents others from hearing or seeing her. The villain forces her in front of a microphone, telling her to scream louder. With the knife raised, he says her voice will be a great addition to his collection. Suddenly, the studio wall explodes with a loud bang. Startled, the man sees Han's avatar there, commenting on his ability. The avatar states that his ability is sound suppression and invisibility. With a threatening look, he warns that the trick doesn't work on him. In a panic, the villain uses her as a hostage and asks how the avatar got in. The villain threatens that if the avatar gets closer, the woman will lose her life, but our hero saves her using his magic, and the enemy acknowledges the ability. Furious, he screams that he dares to steal his prey and that he will eliminate both. The criminal lunges to attack, but his knife hits nothing. Trapped by shadows, the avatar says he has done this before. He states that he will check the man's past. Using necromancy, the avatar sees the villain's cruel memories. Upon seeing the crimes, he concludes that the man is a serial criminal. The protagonist sentences him to destruction, and the villain screams in pain, saying that losing his life is too little. The avatar makes him suffer with his power. He decides to transform him into an undead to use on Earth. With a cruel method, all the red liquid from his body is drained. The transformation turns him into an intermediate undead, a chaste. The avatar sends him through a portal, saying he will be quite useful. Looking at the woman, he decides to call emergency services before leaving. Later, the place fills with police officers and reporters. There was Park Han-chul, the head of the Criminal Investigation Division. An agent informs him that the victim was the serial criminal they were looking for. He says a return killed him, as they found dark magic at the scene. Park Han-chul gets irritated as he doesn't like the idea of a vigilant. To him, these heroes are dangerous, and he points to the mask on the wall. Meanwhile, the avatar continues carrying out his own executions. From atop the building, Han gets annoyed upon hearing this. He says he would like to see his face up close. The scene shifts to the headquarters of the Returned Association in Seoul. A woman enters the office of the branch manager, Yoon Ji-yoon. With a sigh, she gets irritated to see him sleeping at the desk again. She wakes him up with a shake, saying it's an important matter. Sleepy, he asks what the problem is and takes her report. He remembers the case of the thieves and asks if it connects to a crime. He thinks about the suspect's description, a wizard with a ha-ho mask. Tired, he suggests handing the case over to the vigilant, shocking the woman. Excited, he says the masked one would be a great hunting dog if controlled. The woman sighs and says the vigilant should become a guardian. She tells him to stop talking nonsense and get back to working on the documents. Irritated, he throws the papers in the air, saying he wanted to get rid of these villains. Meanwhile, Han stretches, satisfied with taking down criminals. He thinks that, unless they are criminals, he only scares them. Our hero decides he will investigate the villain organization causing chaos. With things settled in his world, Han decides to focus on the other. The scene shifts to the other world, where the children's uncle cries with emotion. Embracing his nephews, he says they have suffered a lot. Our hero feels relieved to see that the uncle seems to be a good person. He thinks he was ready to threaten him, but it wasn't necessary. The uncle thanks him for bringing the children, and Heinz says it was his duty. With tears in her eyes, Diana thanks him for everything. She hugs him tightly, thanking him while crying a lot. He comforts her, saying he will visit her and asks her to take care. The girl says she was afraid of his change, but now feels relieved. Surprised, he wonders if the change is because of the persona ability. The ability gave Hans negative emotions and an exhibitionist side. Meanwhile, Heinz, focused on lies, gained a calm and cold personality. Curious, Diana asks where he plans to go now. Looking at a church, he says he will go on a pilgrimage. Heinz arrives in Thalaria, the capital of the kingdom, with a single goal. The capital is the seat of the goddess's church and the largest temple there. In an alley, he makes sure no one is around. With a blue energy, he summons his fourth avatar. The new clone is named Heinrich and has the spirit of the warrior. He then says that a vampire cannot stay there and hands over a bag. In the temple, Heinrich approaches, called by a priest. He throws a bag full of gold onto the table, shocking a priest. The clerics are astonished, and he claims it is all his fortune. He wishes to dedicate everything to the goddess and become a sacred knight. Han reflects that his other avatars were creatures of darkness. This time, his avatar will be a respected knight of light. Heinrich shows his strong desire to join the order. Instructor Marco says he will train him to be a great knight. The priest states that they cannot accept a stranger just for the donation. Laughing, Marco tells the priest not to worry about that. He explains that the wicked always reveal themselves during training. With a confident smile, Heinrich replies that he will surely show it. Training begins, and the avatar is already exhausted, asking for water. He tries to lift a heavy stone ball, finding the task insane. It has been a month since he started the grueling night training. Our hero realizes that the order is a bunch of muscular and crazy men. With a shout of effort, he continues lifting the enormous weight. An instructor yells at him, saying he forgot to pray during training. The man orders him to concentrate and start chanting his prayers. While praying, the instructor shouts for him to focus even more on the exercise. The rule is that they must pray to restore their broken bodies. The instructor forces him to do one more exercise, shouting, "Oh goddess." He admits that, despite everything, the training method is quite effective. One of the knights asks to be hit harder on the back. Seeing this, he wonders if they need to train in such a strange way. From above, Marco comments to another that recruit Heinrich is impressive. They notice how his body is already strong even before the baptism. Feeling the gazes, he becomes uncomfortable and does not want to draw attention there. Breathless, he reflects on the 3 months of hard training. His body has become stronger, but he is irritated by something else. Marco calls him, asking if he has finished leg training. The instructor invites him to do chest exercises together. Another man says that on a day like this, it's best to train the back. Irritated, he shouts for the muscle maniacs to step aside. With a friend, he complains that the veterans are calling him to train. Suddenly, everyone stirs with the arrival of important people. They are the great Archbishop Ladius and Knight Sir Tuscan. Heinrich recognizes Tuscan and wonders about their return. He remembers the knight who pointed a sword at his avatar hands. He suspects that the expedition was to hunt Hans. A priest announces that the recruits will have the baptism ceremony. He explains that the ceremony has been moved up for special reasons. The priest prepares to call the names of the approved recruits. Heinrich wonders why the ceremony was moved up, but already imagines the reason. He concludes that the knights need reinforcements to hunt the heir of the immortal king. Seeing this as an opportunity, he decides he will test one of his abilities. The plan is to use a new application of the persona and core of the mind abilities. A recruit vows to dedicate his life to the goddess, and the high priest begins the baptism. In the baptism, they sacrifice their mana to receive great sacred power. The blessing received varies greatly, depending on one important factor. The power of the blessing is the faith in the divinity. The purer and more genuine the faith, the stronger the knight will become. The priest calls for Heinrich, who thinks this is why he chose this path. With a smile, he walks confidently to the altar. So far, he has only used the core of the mind to suppress emotions, but upon kneeling, he realizes that the opposite is also possible. Activating Hans's persona, he plans to inject the feeling of faith into Heinrich. When the priest extracts his mana, his plan will be in action. Using the core of the mind, he plans to filter the doubt from his mana. Thus, the mana would become pure, the very essence of faith. To absorb the blessing to the fullest, the protagonist uses all his avatars. All the mental strength of the clones will be focused on Heinrich. The high priest is startled by the immense amount of sacred power. A great explosion of golden light erupts from Heinrich, shocking everyone. The other recruits scream, unable to believe what they are seeing. The sacred energy rises until it reaches the head of the goddess's statue. The priest calls him Sir Heinrich, impressed by the power. He says that Heinrich already has the level of a priest due to his great faith. With a smile, he asks him to keep up the good work. Heinrich gains a new ability and feels relieved that his trick worked. However, with a smile, he realizes that the plan did not work 100%. He understands that the divinity of the church is more of a system than a god. He remembers the strange feeling he had during the baptism. He describes the feeling as something close to curiosity. Before the statue, he thinks that this power should be used for good. In another room, Ladius is frustrated by the lack of clues about the heir of the immortal king. Tuscan says that support from the kingdom is difficult because of the vampires. He explains that the friction between the clans has hindered the search for Hans. Ladius understands that the kingdom is using the lack of progress as pressure. With a sigh, he tells Tuscan to dismiss the extermination squad. As he leaves the room, Tuscan thinks they are surrounded and without reinforcements. He wonders what he should do now. Suddenly, he hears a noise and turns around surprised. Looking down, he sees the new Holy Knights training. One of the recruits charges at Heinrich, seeing a gap in his defense. Heinrich blocks the strike with his arm, but ends up injuring himself a bit. Without hesitation, he delivers a powerful punch to his opponent's face. With the victory, Heinrich gains the new skill cross-combat technique. Combining super recovery and holy power, his wound heals. The opponent realizes that he injured himself on purpose as a tactic. He thinks that it is still not enough and needs a change. A voice says that his holy power is already at a high level. It was Tuscan, who continues saying that he is still inexperienced as a knight, but he should already feel this, leaving him confused. To make him stronger, the paladin invites him to the Rosilia temple. Surprised, Heinrich questions the invitation. He says he wants to go, but Tuscan urges him to leave immediately. He asks for time to gather his things, but the request is denied. The paladin comforts him and assures him that he will explain everything when they arrive. After being teleported, they arrive at the famous Great Rosilia Temple. The place is the largest sanctuary of the church, right in the heart of the continent. There reside the Pope and the Holiness, the center of all faith. A woman with white hair welcomes the two, greeting them. Tuscan thanks the Holiness, and Heinrich is excited about the opportunity. With a smile, he thinks that this is the perfect place to evolve. He plans to grow in the light, leaving the dirty work to others. The scene shifts to the masked avatar, who confronts the villains. On his phone, he sees news about the vigilant Mask Haho. Unintentionally, he has become famous for his actions. Our hero thinks that despite everything, there was something strange about it. Whenever he was about to take down a criminal, they mentioned a society of divine retribution, so he decides that while he eliminates them, he will investigate. In the city center, Heiss the vampire thinks about accumulating gains. He reflects that it would be a good idea for the masked one to negotiate items to attract who he wanted, so he goes to a game store to make the transactions safely. Upon entering, the owner welcomes him, and he quickly shows the bag with items. However, the man says he is not interested in anything he has there. Showing his gold coins, Heiss says he thought they would accept them there. Those were actually badges from a group that was defeated by the masked one. And with a serious look, the avatar asks if the young man is not interested. In response, the man tells him to go to the back doors. Upon opening the door, he is welcomed again. The negotiator asks if he wants to sell something. Taking the bag, Heinz wants to know if he can be paid in something other than money. Examining the badges, the man wants to know what exactly he wants in return. With a smile, he says he wants a winning lottery ticket. He believes that cash is useless if he cannot spend it. What he really wants are things that Han in his world can convert into money. The man talks about the commission, and the protagonist asks the amount. Upon learning of the prize of 6,100 million, he asks for 2 more tickets. The man says that the amount paid is not enough, but he does not worry. Saying he has many assets, he invokes something with a blue light. Gold bars are thrown onto the counter, and the man is shocked. Grabbing the avatar's arm, he asks who he is, but Heiss pulls his arm back and tells him to finish the negotiations quickly, as he did not come there to chat. Startled, the man apologizes and assures him that he will finalize the deal. And at that moment, the vampire realizes that he can really smell the red fluid. Approaching the man, he says that they will be seeing each other a lot from now on. With the tickets in hand, he celebrates the dream of winning the lottery. He thinks it would be good to have subordinates to take care of these things. He decides to enjoy the night and walks down the busy street. Before, the street was dangerous, but now it is full of life again. He feels satisfied to have been responsible for the peace of the place. Suddenly, someone approaches, asking where he is from. Surprised, he turns around, not understanding how someone got behind him. A young man says he just wants to talk, leaving the protagonist confused. Irritated, he accuses the stranger of being weird for approaching like that. The young man asks if he is a vampire, and the avatar becomes alert. With a smile, the young man reveals he is a level 6 vampire. The vampire asks for his name, leaving the protagonist tense. He introduces himself as Heinz and mentions he hasn't returned to Earth in a long time. Our hero is startled by how easily he responds to a stranger. The vampire calls him a rookie and prepares to introduce himself. He introduces himself as Gamma, from the organization Pact of Red Liquid. The avatar is surprised, and Gamma says they need to unite to survive. Curious, the avatar asks about the level he had mentioned. To explain better, Gamma takes the key to his car. A red car appears, and he invites him to get in. Upon accepting, a woman observes the scene and contacts headquarters via radio. She informs that the target is moving as planned. Gamma invites the avatar to enter a dark alley. He explains that a vampire's level is defined by the vampiric factor. The organization Pact of Red Liquid quantifies this power in levels. In front of a magic circle, he says they can measure the level there. Suspicious, the hero finds the whole situation quite dubious. He decides to enter, thinking he can cancel the summoning if needed. Inside the circle, he notices traces of black magic on a skull. Several different spells were mixed there, which intrigues him. Even after 20 years since the returners appeared, magical tools are still rare. Impressed, he thinks the organization is better than he imagined. Soon after, the vampire cuts Heinz's hand, and the liquid begins to flow. He forms 5 orbs, indicating that he is level 5. From the orbs, the man realizes he has good healing abilities. With a disappointed look, Gamma says he is only level 5, and with an evil look, he says that with this level, it won't be necessary to cut off limbs. Thus, the other hooded vampires begin the ritual. Heinz realizes they had other plans for him. He understands that the ritual was too complex just to measure his level. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupts the ritual, startling Gamma. The woman following the two invades the place and attacks one of the hooded figures. With a look of fury, she arrests Gamma for kidnapping and for taking lives. Fallen on the ground, the protagonist finds the woman familiar. She says she didn't believe the tip that they were vampires. Pointing at Gamma, she orders him to release the other vampire and surrender. With a smile, Gamma questions why they should be slaves. Furious, he says they shouldn't live hiding from humans. Irritated, the woman says it's because of people like him that they hide. With a mocking look, Gamma says that's just her opinion, and he comments that her companions also thought like him. Suddenly, one of his partners attacks the other member. The other agent yells at Minyoung, not believing the betrayal. With a final blow, the vampire is defeated by her own colleagues. The traitor explains that in the other world, he was a powerful lord. Now he lives in a basement and works as a nightclub security guard. He says not every vampire lives comfortably like she does. Jin Saran questions him about kidnapping vampires and rebelling. With a smile, he says they found a way to become stronger. He reveals a quick method to increase the power of vampires. Shocked, she accuses him of tampering with what is forbidden by them. Gamma asks where she thinks the kidnapped vampires went. Horrified, she accuses him of creating crazed vampires for red liquid. To our hero, this action was the same as humans eating humans. But vampires do this because when they devour another, their powers combine. Out of control, they become monsters thirsty for red liquid. Gamma says they discovered how to purify the red liquid and avoid this, and they will be great materials for his research. The protagonist understands the true function of the magic circle. It wasn't to measure levels, rather for something more sinister. The circle transformed vampires into a drug without side effects. The traitor demands his promise, saying he fulfilled the agreement. Gamma hands him a small red pill as promised. The man swallows the pill and begins to scream in pain from the transformation. Surprised, he sees his body change and his power increase rapidly. Wanting more, he grabs Jin Soran by the neck tightly. The traitor demands more of the drug, and Gamma tries to calm him down. He points to the hero, saying he is next in line. With a smile, he asks the vampire to wait a little longer, but Heinz orders him to stop this. He was watching everything and realized the effectiveness of what they were doing between dimensions. With an evil look, he prepares to devour everyone there, and soon below, a portal opens. Hans appears and says their security is pathetic. With his skeletons, Hans warns that no one will leave without permission. Startled, Gamma tells everyone to stay together to avoid being defeated. Bone spikes grow on the body of the transformed vampire. With a powerful punch, he easily destroys one of the skeletons. He charges at Hans, finding the transformation strange. The avatar realizes that the appearance of vampires changes between dimensions. Hans attacks with his staff, aiming at the transformed vampire. The vampire is hit squarely by the blow. Suddenly, Heinz appears, and Hans gets irritated for not being able to capture them. Our hero laments the unforeseen event but says it's not a big problem. To everyone's surprise, Heinz bites the transformed vampire. Shocked, Gamma screams, not understanding what he is seeing. The traitorous vampire remembers the reason he betrayed his friends. Heinz says that mental contamination is worse when feeding on him. With wide eyes, the vampire avatar says he can feel something. The different vampiric factors combine and evolve within him. With this, he gains the special ability called hybrid evolution. With his new claws, he scares Gamma and finds the new power incredible. Needing an organization, he decides to take the Pact of the Red Fluid. With a wicked smile, he warns what will happen to those who resist. Those who challenge him will become his food or part of his army. Devouring another vampire, he gains the ability called Perception. The new ability allows him to measure the strength of enemies. With hybrid evolution, it becomes possible to steal the powers of vampires. Shocked, Gamma does not understand how he is still sane after eating others. With a smile, the avatar asks if he wants to know how to avoid madness. Approaching, he tells him to simply not listen to the whispers. With a final blow, he devours Gamma and gains the skill Concealment. The new ability allows him to completely erase his presence. Soon after, the protagonist decides to read Gamma's mind. He sees images of the Society of Divine Retribution and someone named Beta. Our hero wonders if Beta is Gamma's superior. Confused, he does not understand the organization's plans with the ritual. The scene changes and the red car speeds through the city. Inside the car, Jin Saran is deep in thought. Upon waking, Jin Saran is confronted by the vampire avatar. Next to her is the protagonist driving, and soon after he grabs her by the neck, saying she has betrayed her kind. Apologizing for the sudden attack, she asks what happened, and he explains the situation. She thanks him for saving her and introduces herself as Jin Soran from Nocturnia. He finds her familiar and asks about the fight among the members of the pact. Jin Soran explains that the organization is divided into two factions. She recounts that she invaded the place to rescue a kidnapped member. The vampire celebrates that they escaped and discovered their plan. The protagonist thinks that the leaders of the other faction must be involved. She asks where he is from and if she can call him Appa. He explains that he just returned recently and only followed Gamma out of curiosity. The girl invites him to join her faction of the Red Fluid Pact. Excited about the chance to meet him, Heinz even accelerates more. Arriving at a house, she invites him to enter the place. Suddenly, a little girl calls for Soren Uni and surprises her. The little girl hugs Jin Soran, who asks if she is okay. The young woman introduces him to the girl, and the avatar greets her. She says she will show him his room, and the girl asks her to come back. Going up the stairs, he wonders about the little girl from before. He questions her age, and Jin Soran says she is not a returnee. She explains that Nahi, the little girl, was born and raised on Earth. Her father turned her into a vampire to save her from an illness. Heinz thinks he understands why the government wants to control vampires. She says that transforming someone on Earth consumes much more energy. Her father did everything he could for her to live under the sun. Arriving at room, she opens the door for him to enter. She tells him to rest and says goodbye as she leaves the room. As she waves goodbye, the protagonist is surprised. He remembers that gesture and the voice. Shocked, he remembers the streamer and shouts her name, BJ Orchid. Surprised, Jin Soran is startled to be recognized by him. Embarrassed, she asks if he is one of her subscribers. He replies that he is not, and she says she feels embarrassed about the situation. The young woman shares that she was an idol trainee and started streaming out of regret. He asks her age, and she responds that she is 22 years old. Jin Soran asks his age, and the avatar feels awkward. Then she shuts the door in his face and shouts that she will tell him later. Confused, she wonders if she said something wrong to him. In his room, he thinks that she was younger than him, but in fact, she is older. Sitting on the bed, he decides to research the famous streamer. He sees a post from her and understands that she went to the site of the ritual. Thinking about the situation, he feels relieved that he saved her in time. The next day, he wakes up to a loud noise coming from outside. He hears someone shouting about the lack of evidence in the case. As he descends the stairs, he asks what went wrong, and Jin Soran greets him. Regretting, she explains that the ritual site was burned without leaving any clues. Saying it's a shame, our hero takes the opportunity to ask for a favor. For his plan, he asks for the location of the other faction's base. Worried, she wonders if he didn't like the bags of red liquid. To calm her, he says he wants the map just to avoid enemies. In his mind, the plan is to evolve Heinz by feeding on other vampires. Handing over the phone with the map, she warns him to be careful. Despite the offer of a meal, he politely declines the invitation. Looking at the map on the phone, he comments on the nearby restaurants. With a wicked smile, he prepares to explore some of those places. Wiping his fingers, Heinz comments that the meal was delicious. Amidst bodies and destruction, he calls the place yet another great restaurant. With one last sigh, a vampire on the ground calls him a bastard. Filled with rage, the survivor threatens that his clan will hunt him down. Feigning surprise, the protagonist breaks a glass and asks how he knows him. Thanks to the concealment ability he stole, he left them blind. Approaching the frightened vampire, he says there have been no problems so far. Grabbing the man, the hero demands to know where his companions are. In the vampire's mind, a warning about a meeting of all members appears. Realizing the chance to eliminate the leadership, he smiles wickedly. Before leaving, he decides to clean up all the mess he left behind. Using a new ability, he creates a red flower made of red liquid. The technique Blooming Red Liquid creates a flower that burns the target. With burning petals, he incinerates the physical traces and conceals the magical ones. Releasing the petals, he prepares to finalize the plan once and for all. Seeing the hall in flames, he is sure that no one will track him down. Suddenly, a sharp pain strikes him directly in the heart. With veins bulging, he realizes that his body is evolving again. Amidst a scream of pain, his pure red liquid lineage evolves into true red liquid. His teeth fall out, and he gains the ability to amplify blood flow. His regeneration breaks limits and evolves into hyper-regeneration. With a satisfied look, he celebrates the evolution into true red liquid. Curious, he decides to test the new abilities he just gained. When he cuts his own hand, the wound heals in the blink of an eye. With the ability to absorb red liquid, he considers himself almost invincible. Looking at a painting, he wonders how strong a sacred red liquid would be. The scene shifts to the live stream that receives a large donation. A fan donates 1,000,000 cheeses, and she thanks with a cute gesture. With the money, she celebrates that she will be able to buy her food. Entering the room, Heinz stares at her with a serious look and says nothing. Embarrassed, he apologizes and tells her to continue what she was doing. With a red face, she tries to shout at him for entering without knocking. The vampire closes the door and, still embarrassed, looks at him seriously. With her hand on her hip, she asks what his problem is. Scratching his head, he says that a letter arrived in his name. He hands her an envelope, and Jin Soren takes it, curious about the contents. Inside, she finds photos of the crimes of the other vampire faction. The vampire wonders who sent it, but suspects the masked Haho. She starts connecting the dots and suspects that Heinz is the vigilant. With a smile, he wonders if it's just a big coincidence. The scene shifts, and the two avatars observe the mansion of the other faction. Using perception, he analyzes the entire location. He detects a barrier of red liquid and sees the leaders on the first floor. With the plan in mind, he prepares Hans for the surprise attack. Together, they get ready to invade and take out everyone at once. With a kick, Heinz invades the mansion, shouting for the criminals to prepare. Upon entering, he is surprised to see the room completely empty. Suddenly, a mirror shatters, and a voice says it was trying to catch the vigilant. Several vampires appear, and the leader is surprised by an unknown vampire. Not intimidated, the protagonist advances to attack the group of enemies. The leader asks if Beta 1 or Beta Shin know who he is. One of them says he seems to be level 7, but that he doesn't know him. The other agrees, saying he must have come from an unknown place. Heinz remembers the hierarchy of the organization with Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. With a smile, he realizes that the two betas are in front of him. The biggest problem is the masked men he cannot sense. With a gesture, the leader orders them to drag the wretch forward. Pointing to the shadows, he commands them to bring Hans along. Surprised, the Avatar realizes they already knew about Hans' presence. With a furious look, he decides to finish everyone off quickly. Activating the blood flow amplification, he stomps hard on the ground. With incredible speed, he uses acceleration and attacks the henchmen. He takes the opportunity to feed off the other vampires, causing others who witness it to be shocked. With no time for surprises, the real show begins with the arrival of the skeletons. Attacked by the skeletons, the vampires panic and scream in fear. In desperation, one of them pushes his own companion to survive. As he tries to flee, he is pulled back by a dark force. Blocking the exit, the masked avatar reveals his dark barrier. With a cold gaze, the masked avatar prepares for the final battle. Facing the enemies, he and his companion declare a fight with no escape. With a scream of pain, a vampire's head is ripped off in the attack. Beta 1 is shocked by his strength, realizing there is a trick involved. Seeing his allies advance, he prepares for the battle that is to come. Heinz prepares an attack with his claws, and Beta 1 does the same afterward. Using skin hardening, Beta 1 defends himself, but his skin cracks. Surprised, the Avatar says that if he blocked, he would have to try harder. With a powerful punch, he easily breaks the defense. Shocked, the vampire cannot believe his hardened skin was broken. On the ground, he screams in pain from the devastating blow received. The other Beta shouts for his men to stop the protagonist. With red orbs, he wonders where their confidence comes from. In an instant, he attacks and defeats the subordinates with his powers. Seeing the scene, Beta 1 calls him a very dangerous wretch. Taking advantage of the distraction, he prepares an attack to eliminate the Avatar. With a crystal blade, he charges forward, shouting for the protagonist to die. Without waiting, our hero ends up getting hit. Even so, he tells the enemy that doing this is pointless. Absorbing the liquid from other enemies, he reveals that he continuously strengthens himself. Besides being stronger, the Avatar says he also gained a new ability. With a snap of his fingers, he uses invisibility and disappears into the air. Frightened, Beta Shin looks around, unable to find him anywhere. Whispering in his ear, the protagonist appears right behind him. With a surprise attack, he pierces Shin's back with his claws. With a victorious smile on his face, he declares his checkmate. After devouring him, his ability evolves into the mystery of the red liquid. Feeling the new power, he realizes he can control his abilities with his mind. Now the Avatar can manipulate his powers much more quickly. The last Beta accuses him of being a crazy and traitorous vampire for feeding on others. Shocked, he understands the origin of the protagonist's strange abilities. With no patience, Heinz asks if he is going to complain all day. Provocatively, he challenges him to attack, insinuating that he is afraid. With a scream of fury, the last Beta charges at the protagonist. Using the mystery of the red liquid, the Avatar launches an attack with tentacles. Irritated, the vampire accuses him of using tricks, but is immobilized by the magic. With a smile, the hero says he will also tell him something. In the blink of an eye, he cuts the enemy's neck. Shocked, the others realize that the masked one indeed had an assistant. Seeing the situation, the leader orders them to prepare the orb to attack. Together, they launch a powerful energy attack against the protagonist. With the help of the masked Avatar, he protects himself from the impressive attack. The energy rays are deflected, hitting the vampires themselves. Seeing the strength of the Avatars, one of the men realizes that the fight is futile. Trying to flee, he is stopped by the leader of the organization, Alpha. With a quick strike, Alpha attacks him, asking where he thinks he is going. And using his power, the leader holds the subordinate. Screening for the organization, Alpha sacrifices his subordinate. With a spatial manipulation spell, he prepares to flee the location. The masked Avatar observes the spell with a look of disdain. Understanding that it is a self-destruction curse, he calls Alpha irresponsible. With a confident smile, he prepares to prevent the leader's escape. In a swift movement, the Avatar uses his own magic to interfere. Saying that the curse is nothing, he prepares to undo it. Upon analyzing the magic, he discovers that the energy source is 2 orbs. Declaring himself to be the one who governs the end, he launches his final attack. From the sky, a blade of energy falls and destroys Alpha's escape portal. Irritated, the leader of the vampires is shocked by the failure of his plan. Fallen to the ground, he realizes the incredible strength of the protagonist's barrier. Satisfied to have survived, he is surprised by the masked Avatar. With a hand on his face, the skeleton finds him, thwarting his escape. With no time for games, he says he won't let him escape again. With a cold look, the masked Avatar warns that he will do things his way. In a panic, Alpha realizes that his mind is being invaded by the enemy. The protagonist demands that he show all the memories of the secret organization. Suddenly, a strong light explodes from Alpha's head, surprising the Avatar. He understands that it is a security mechanism to protect the memories. Unexpectedly, the Avatar is transported to the mental realm. With a smile, the leader of the organization invites him to join them. Curious, the hero asks what the purpose of the organization is. Sitting on his throne, the leader says they seek the freedom of the returned. Laughing at their ambition, the masked Avatar calls them a recent organization. The leader reveals that they have existed for much longer than he imagines. Understanding the truth, the protagonist accuses him of committing acts of destruction. With a blue aura, Han demands an answer, his anger being contained. With the core ability of the mind at its limit, Han's anger is forcibly contained. Mocking, the leader says that it doesn't matter and awaits a wise choice. Impatient, the masked Avatar attacks with a powerful punch to his face. The leader is surprised but says that here mental strength is superior to magic. With a smile, he says that the protagonist cannot defeat him here. Understanding the rule, the masked Avatar prepares to counter the attack. The protagonist uses his other avatars to help him. He even uses his mind to empower the Avatar. Thus, with the strength of all the avatars, he says that the leader cannot defeat them. The scene shifts to Heinrich, who continues his heavy training with chains. With one last pull, he breaks a statue of an angel, exhausted from the exercise. Finally, he achieves his goal and gains the ability Robust Body Blessing. With a smile, he realizes that his divine power has reached the level of a high priest. Walking down a corridor, he cannot believe he has surpassed his limits just through training. Now with the qualifications, he prepares to discuss the next step of his plan. In a garden, he hears a humming and finds a holiness, the leader of the order. Watching her, he thinks that despite the title, she seems like an ordinary girl. With a radiant smile, the holiness greets him, calling him by name. Enchanted by her divine aura, he greets her with respect and admiration. He asks why she is alone, and the holiness smiles innocently. With a ladybug on her finger, she says she got distracted watching the cute insect. Surprised, he realizes that she wasn't looking at the flowers but rather an insect. With a bright look, the holiness congratulates him for finally receiving the blessing. Impressed, he thinks that she truly lives up to the title of holiness. With a smile, the holiness says he should be proud of his achievement. Upon hearing the bells, she says it is time for the religious service. Inviting him to the chapel, she points the way with a gesture. The protagonist begins to understand her obsession with Hans. In a flashback, the story of the first immortal king is revealed. With his army, the king transformed half the continent into a land of darkness. Even with the union of the nations, a dark wizard reclaimed his heart. Reborn, the second immortal king brought ruin to the world. The chosen one of the order destroyed his heart, which shattered into three. The divine order has always been at the forefront against the immortal king. That is why the holiness harbors great hatred and obsession for him. With a smile, the Avatar thinks that there is no longer a need for this. He remembers Han's dark past and his gentle personality. With a new plan in mind, he focuses on using his powers. The scene shifts to the one commanding the leader of the mental realm, and he is spitting red liquid. A servant approaches, concerned about his health. Irritated, he pushes the man away, saying he is disrupting his concentration. In his mental realm, he cannot believe he is being outmatched in battle. With a powerful punch, the masked Avatar attacks him, questioning the situation. Being thrown back, the leader realizes he had the advantage at the beginning. Now he sees that the protagonist's power has grown uncontrollably. It is as if several people had combined their strengths into one. Not understanding the defeat, his spiritual body begins to shatter. Outside the mental realm, he cries, unable to believe he is losing. Urgently, he asks the servant to pass an order to the soul branch. In desperation, he orders all operations to cease and the information to be erased. He also instructs to inform the commander about the threat of a monster in Korea. With Alpha's spiritual body destroyed, the Avatar approaches the fragments. Analyzing a shard, he laments having lost the trail of the leader. Upon absorbing the fragment, his ability evolves into the path of sorcery. With the fragment in hand, he understands that his growth is what remains of Alpha in the mental realm, and so he uses what little he has to read the remaining memories. With his powers, he decides that he will track down the organization's hideout. In the midst of a forest, he finds the Korean branch of the secret society. With a dark aura, he warns that he will give no chance for escape. Suddenly, an explosion hits the location, startling one of the researchers. The masked Avatar appears and asks if the evacuation order has been given. Unable to escape, the researcher is lifted by the neck. Seeing that he has disposed of the materials, the Avatar questions him about what to do. With a smile, he says that by saving the data, the man handed everything over to him. Reading the documents, the Avatar is surprised by the organization's crime. With the papers trembling in his hands, he is shocked to see what they were involved in. Overcome with rage, he declares that he will never forgive what they did. The explosion that eliminated his family was caused by them, and now he swears that he will not leave a single one alive. In a flashback, Han remembers the attack that destroyed his family. With his fist clenched, the anger grows within him. He now understands that the secret organization was responsible for the loss. With his head in his hands, he realizes that his enemies are very strong. Determined, he vows that the organization will pay for everything they have done. For that, he needs a plan and begins to train his new abilities. With a red crystal in hand, he plans to use it in Heinz's red liquid. The idea is to implant the crystal in other vampires to strengthen them. With a smile, he holds the crystal ready to execute his plan. He knows that the inheritance of the red liquid will connect the vampires to him. With a grim look, he declares that those who resist will be crushed. The scene changes. In her room, Jin Soran is shocked to learn that Heinz defeated the enemies. Sitting in the chair, she is surprised by his request. He confirms that he took care of almost everyone and wants to speak with her faction leader. Shocked, she asks for time to verify the facts before reporting. With a red aura, he asks if that serves as proof. Frightened, Jin Soran fears the Avatar's power. Realizing his strength, she decides to contact the leader immediately. In a room, the faction leader is surprised by Heinz's proposal. With a glass of red liquid in hand, she finds the proposal quite unexpected. The vampire stares at him, finding the idea disturbing. Calmly, he explains that he has no intention of giving absurd orders. His goal is to maintain peace and order among the vampires. Laughing at the proposal, she questions if there is not a contradiction in that. With a cold look, he says that everything depends on the point of view. In her mind, she understands that she will have to use force if she refuses. Suddenly, the leader agrees to the proposal, leaving him surprised. He questions her confidence. With a gesture, she says that she trusts herself and will help him. To everyone's surprise, she orders Jin Soran to accompany him as a bridge. Excited, Heinz says that was exactly what he wanted. With the conversation started, they plan how to absorb the other faction. Additionally, they discuss the new faction that is emerging. The leader toasts with Heinz, celebrating the new alliance. With the glass in hand, he plans to become the leader of a new group. Toasting, they celebrate the first step to take control of the pact. The scene changes. Heinz asks Jin Soran to stay still so she doesn't get hurt. With a serious look, he prepares to start the procedure. Sitting in a chair, she watches him with her arms crossed. Thus, the red crystal is implanted in her back. Feeling the power, she notices the crystal warming her body. The red liquid begins to pulse faster, and she feels the change. Her muscles and bones expand, and she feels reborn. With a strange sensation, she says that her body doesn't even feel like hers anymore. Watching, Heinz notes that the crystal increases her power by 30%. Now stronger, Jin Soran calls him Lord, leaving him surprised. With a smile, he says that with the new lineage, he created a new clan. For the clan, he suggests that they need an appropriate name. Thinking of a name, he says it should be something striking. With an idea in mind, he notices the mutation caused by the crystal. With a smile, he decides that the name will be Heterosis. Before the followers, he declares the name of the new faction. With a confident look, he prepares to lead the strongest clan. The scene shifts to Han, who stretches contentedly with the progress. Sitting in his chair, he thinks that the organization is global and dangerous. To defeat them, he needs more power and influence in the other world. He thinks about causing major events for that, like wars or attacks. Suddenly, he is startled by his own dark thoughts. With a shout, he reprimands himself for thinking about hurting innocents. With his hand on the book, he wonders if there is another way out. Looking at the book, he decides that maybe he should just clean up the mess. With a smile, he realizes that he has found a way to solve the problems. The idea is to create a conflict between the villain Hans and the hero Heinrich. While Hans would gather corrupt nobles, Heinrich would defeat them as a hero. Thus, he finds the plan a perfect cycle for his objectives. Excited, he decides that he will execute the plan one step at a time. With a shout, he calls for Harley, his fifth avatar, to act. Harley has the ability to adapt quickly to any situation. Han decides that he will further develop this ability. With a smile, he has an idea of how to put the plan into action. The scene shifts to Hans, the masked one. In an underground laboratory, he finds several bizarre experiments. There, they were transplanting demon bodies into humans, creating chimeras. Among the samples, he finds what he was looking for his plan. He searches for something that absorbs strong traits and evolves continuously, and thus he finds the creature Red Dragon Liquid. Holding the vial, he plans to use the red liquid to strengthen Harley. If the plan works, Harley will become the ultimate biological weapon. On a rainy day, the saint sighs with a worried look. With an umbrella, Heinz approaches and asks what worries her. Surprised, she says it's nothing and that it might just be the bad weather. With her hands on her chest, she says she feels a tightness, as if something is suffocating her. Worried, he advises her to go inside so she doesn't catch a cold. The scene shifts to a remote mountain. Hans comments that he expected this from a saint. He is impressed because even with barriers in a distant place, the young woman was sensing them. In the laboratory, he prepares for the experiment with Harley lying on the stretcher. Holding the vial, he says he can finally start the experiment. The red dragon liquid evolves by absorbing the traits of its prey. With the knowledge gained, he prepares for the next phase. Having the perfect test subject, he gets ready to initiate the experiment. With a wicked smile, he shouts to start the experiment. The scene shifts to Heinrich, who is called for a new mission. Before a priest, Heinrich vows to protect the innocent as a knight. With the oath made, he is officially named a holy knight. Upon receiving the order's necklace, he gains the ability Blessing of Leap. Everyone is surprised by the blessing, seeing it as proof of the divine gaze. In a brief moment, he feels the will of the divine being again. He wonders if the attention is because he is from another world. With a smile, he decides to check the blessing and is surprised by the power. The ability to transcend space is basically a teleportation. Kneeling, he thanks the divinity for the grace and for taking care of him. Two priests are moved by the devotion of the young knight. A colleague congratulates him and says he will be assigned to various orders. Several representatives from the Knight Orders invite him to join. A man introduces himself as a member of the Celestial Shield Order, specialists in spears. Next, a knight from the Solar Wolf Order invites him to his faction. Finally, a veteran from the Thunder Claw Order introduces himself with a smile. Before the knights, he needs to decide which order he will train in. With a smile, he says he doesn't need to think twice about his choice. To everyone's surprise, he declares that he will train in all orders. With his skills, he plans to absorb all combat techniques. With a serious look, he notices a person who has not yet introduced himself. Curious, he asks why the purple-haired knight hasn't said anything. The colleague says that his order is more selective with its members. With crossed arms, the knight says they only choose the best. Analyzing Heinrich, he says that perhaps he can take the test. Shocked, the protagonist does not understand the criteria of that order. With a gesture, the knight beckons him to follow him to the test location. Walking down the corridor, he explains that his order guards an important place. Upon reaching a door, he says he will reveal the secret if he passes. In the room, they find a hooded figure with a mask. Shocked, the protagonist recognizes the figure as an inquisitor of heresy. The knight says that he just needs to read the text aloud. With a cold sweat, he wonders if this is a spy detector. Feigning offense, he says that his faith is being questioned. With a serious look, the knight says it is just a procedure. Under pressure, he finds himself with no way to avoid the test of faith. Starting to read, he swears to keep silent under any circumstances. To protect himself, he decides to throw himself into the fire and mark his body. It was so hot that smoke even came out of his mouth, and the Inquisitor approves him. As he passes through the gate, the knight explains that it was not a prohibition, but he gets irritated because this blessing of silence is exactly a prohibition. Introducing himself, he says, "They are the Order of the Radiant Shield." Looking at one of the knights, he is warned that this will be the only time he sees the place. In front of a large gate, he tells him to see what they protect. Shocked, the protagonist realizes the great secret kept in the temple. There lies the last fragment of the immortal king. Before the fragment, he cannot believe it was hidden there all along. With a smile, he thinks it was obvious that the order would find it. With a clenched fist, he knows he cannot take the fragment now. 4 orders of knights guard the temple, making the mission impossible. With a serious look, he decides he needs to think of a way. The knight warns that the blessing will prevent him from revealing the secret. With a firm look, he says that the fact must not be revealed. Smiling, Heinrich promises that only he and his other selves will know about it. The scene changes and the masked avatar celebrates the discovery of the fragment. Worried, he notices that Harley's procedure is unstable. Trapped on the stretcher, Harley coughs and the avatar does not understand the problem. With a strange feeling, Harley says he feels his body boiling. The dragon's red liquid has settled, but something is still wrong. With an adjustment, the avatar increases the intensity of the procedure. With a scream of pain, Harley's body begins to react to the increase. Worried, the avatar wonders if Harley's recovery has reached its limit. Afraid of losing everything, he decides to risk one last attempt. Without thinking twice, he injects all the remaining dragon's red liquid. With a scream of pain, Harley's body begins to react to so much power. A great explosion of red energy throws the avatar away. Looking at the stretcher, he wonders if the experiment failed. With a sad look, he apologizes to Harley for his recklessness. Suddenly, a notification of skill growth appears. Shocked, he does not understand how that can be considered growth. With the evolution, he gains the special skill Physical Mutation. The adaptation skill evolves into the special skill Mutation. Celebrating, he realizes that Harley's mind has finally connected. With a smile, Harley says he feels like a new species. Noting in his book, the avatar says that the good news keeps coming. With a smile, he celebrates the natural growth of his avatars. With his hand on the book, he decides he will discover how to use the new avatar. Full of confidence, Harley prepares to test his new abilities. The scene changes to a forest, where the avatar breathes the fresh air. With arms wide open, he feels renewed with his new powers. Satisfied, he realizes that his senses have become much sharper. He can hear the breathing of a beast watching him from afar. Suddenly, a black panther roars and prepares to attack. Excited, he recognizes the beast as the same one from his first time there. Without fear, he grabs the panther by the neck, apologizing, and then he throws it away, showing his strength. Laughing at the situation, he prepares for battle against the beast. Being hit, he screams in pain but does not falter from the attack. With a wild look, he opens the panther's chest in search of something. Holding the beast's core, he says he found it, with a greedy look. With the core in hand, he prepares to begin his evolution. As he swallows the stone, he feels his concept strengthen with the energy. Showing his muscles, he decides to solidify his power with physical mutation. His body grows, and he realizes the advantage of a larger physique. With the evolution, he gains the special skill Gluttonous Feast. Hungry, he realizes that the mutation has left him very hungry. Holding the beast's heart, he says that hunger will not be a problem. As he bites the heart, he tastes something sweet and refreshing. Laughing, he cannot contain his impulses and feels like a lunatic. With a serious look, he realizes that his behavior is wild. Remembering a barbarian alliance, he decides to change classes. The scene changes to Tarak, a county in the kingdom of Tulek. In front of the Sailors Guild, people are startled by the figure. Inside a bar, a man wonders what a barbarian is doing there. Everyone is on alert, and the attendant greets him nervously. With a muscular body, he admires himself, finding it a bit exaggerated. His goal is to become an influential and unforgettable hero. In the bar, a nervous man asks what he intends to do there. With a punch on the table, he says he came to exterminate the monsters. Startled, the man guides him to the ship, and the avatar prepares. Returning to Heinlich, he continues to train hard in the rain. A priest declares him the winner, and he faces his opponent. With the training, he gains the skill of comprehensive mastery in weapons. Satisfied, he knows that the experience will help his other avatars. Suddenly, he notices the holiness in the garden, dressed in ceremonial attire. Curious, he wonders what she is doing there alone. As he approaches, the holiness greets him with a smile. With a gesture, she says she is sharing her power with the worms. Shocked, he wonders if the worms will turn into giant monsters. And looking at her, he wonders if there will be any special event. She confirms and says that a guest capable of tracking the immortal king will arrive. Shocked, he wonders who could possibly track Hans. Not knowing how to explain, she invites him to participate in the event, and he cannot hide his joy upon receiving the invitation. The scene shifts to the chapel, where Lord Granwood's entrance is announced. Surprised, the protagonist has never seen a formation of knights like that. They enter through the front door, and Heinlich is shocked to see them. With a smile, the guest reveals himself as a high elf from the Elven Kingdom. He introduces himself as Rafori Granwood, the guest of honor. In a shop, Hubert, the sixth avatar, analyzes a bronze object. With a tired look, the shop owner calls him to make a decision. Irritated, he asks if the avatar is going to buy, since he has been there for 2 hours. Holding a necklace, Hubert apologizes to the shop owner. With a smile, he admits that he still lacks experience as an evaluator. Hubert was obtained through the growth of Harley, his other avatar. His initial skill is evaluation, which allows him to see the details of items. Over time, he plans to become a merchant who dominates the continent. Before that, he needs to deal with the reactions of other merchants. For that, Harley's heroic influence needs to grow even more. The scene shifts to a snowy mountain where Harley encounters a bear. With a smile, he says the bear is the biggest problem on the mountain. With a furious roar, the beast prepares to attack the avatar. Wielding his axe, he charges into battle against the monster. With a quick spin, he attacks the bear with all his strength. Seeing an opening in the bear's defense, he prepares for the attack. With a leap, he raises his axe for a devastating blow. With a war cry, he brings down the axe with all his might. To his surprise, the bear's skin is too tough, and the axe breaks. Irritated, he calls the beast crazy and prepares for a counterattack. With a powerful strike, the bear throws him away with its paw. Fallen in the snow, he can't believe his axe didn't work. Seeing the bear advance, he decides to use his special ability. With a shout, he activates physical mutation for battle. His arm transforms, and he delivers a powerful punch to the bear. The impact of the blow creates a large crater in the snowy mountain. With his transformed arm, he realizes his fists are stronger. Looking at his body, he questions if he will be a hero like this. With a serious look, he wonders if he can use the monster's vitality. Determined, he prepares to try a new approach in the battle. Focused, he tries to pull only the energy, without the transformation. With a flame in his hand, he finally reaches enlightenment. With a smile, he gains the special ability Bio-Aura. Satisfied, he feels that the new ability is more human. Suddenly, a giant ogre appears in front of him, surprising him. With a stomp, the ogre stares at him, and he prepares to attack. But Harley decides to test his new power. Just as the ogre brings down its foot, he uses the ability. Laughing at the situation, the ogre seems not to have felt the attack. Managing to lift the creature's foot, the avatar questions if it finds this funny. Irritated, he says he will show what is truly funny. With his body on fire, he prepares for a powerful attack. Shouting, he charges with all his strength against the ogre. With a flaming kick, he strikes the giant monster's leg. With his axe in hand, he prepares for the next strike. This time, the monster realizes it is in danger, and with a spinning strike, Harley attacks it with all his strength. Advancing, he prepares for the final blow against the giant beast. Holding the axe's handle, he concentrates all his energy. Amidst pieces of the monster, he declares that he is ascending to hero status. Suddenly, he smells a strange and disgusting odor in the air. The smell leads him to a forest covered in snow and dark energy. Following the trail, he encounters mysterious knights in the forest. In the distance, he spots the base of the organization Vow of Challenge. Unaware of their plans, he wonders what they are plotting. With a wicked smile, he vows to uproot the roots of evil. With a shout, he launches an energy ring at the enemy base. The scene shifts to Raffery, who praises the tea served by the Holiness. With a smile, he thanks the leader of the order for her hospitality. The Holiness is pleased and says the order is grateful for his visit. Beside her is the Avatar Knight who observes everything. The Elven Kingdom, devoted to the World Tree, joins the cause. Despite different gods, the Order and the Elves respect each other. With a handshake, the alliance between the two peoples is sealed. He wonders if the High Elves will use the World Tree to find Hans. Fascinated, he notes that the pupils of the High Elves are star-shaped. Raffery notices Henlik's gaze, leaving him all flustered. But the Holiness apologizes for staring, leaving the Avatar confused. Pointing to his eye, Raffery explains that it is the mark of a High Elf. Born as priests, they are the bridge between the tree and the people. Compatibility is rare, and the birth of a new High Elf is crucial. The Holiness asks if the help he needs is related to this. He reveals that a qualified child has been captured by slave hunters. Shocked, the Holiness asks if he knows where the child might be. With a dark look, he says she was taken to the northern mountains. It turns out Henlik remembers Harley, who found an elf. Raffery explains that she still looks like an ordinary elf without her powers. The elf describes her appearance, and it matches exactly with the one found chained. Shocked, Henlik connects the dots. When he found her, Harley asked the elf's name. In a weak voice, she says her name is Cecily. Chained and scared, she repeats her name to the Avatar. Amidst screams, Harley advances through the cave, defeating his enemies. Two hooded men try to stop him from reaching the storage. With a smile, he says they cannot deal with a monster like him. Carrying Cecily, he storms into the place, defeating the guards. He asks if that is the storage, and the elf confirms, dazed. With the girl still dizzy, she says she needs to find something before they escape. With a gesture, she points to a branch of the World Tree. Then she hands it to him, and warns that things will get difficult from there. Before fleeing, he stretches his body to endure. The girl asks him to go slowly, but ignoring her, he runs with all his speed. The scene shifts, and Henlik makes a suggestion to Raffery about the child. While the elf sips his tea, the Avatar warns that he knows where the girl is. Surprised, Raffery asks if he has any tracking blessing. He says no, but he can sense her presence somehow. One of the knights gets irritated with the uncertainty of the situation. With a serious look, the Holiness asks him to explain in more detail. Returning to Harley's escape, the enemies realize they are fleeing. With a flute, one of the kidnappers calls for a giant creature. Shocked, Harley realizes the creature is blocking his exit. A giant worm emerges from the ground, and he cannot believe his eyes. With no choice, he decides he will have to carve a path with force. With his feet on fire, he charges at the giant worm. With a powerful kick, he attacks, shouting for it to get out. Shocked, he realizes he is inside the mouth of the giant worm. Inside, he finds a magical control circle. With his hands on fire, he understands why the creature was there. Like a true hero, he decides to save the worm from control. With a shout, he throws it back to its home. With one last effort, the worm flies away, free from control. With a smile, he tells Cecily to promise to live a long life. Suddenly, Harley and Cecily are surrounded by giant wolves. With a serious look, he wonders what the organization is plotting. Not caring, he decides he will take them all down. From a distance, the hooded men watch the battle, impressed. Irritated, the leader does not understand how he found the hideout. Elder Narabi from the Vow of Challenge decides this is the end. Surrounded, Cecily says he cannot defeat all the monsters. One of the wolves bites her arm, but her skin transforms into scales. With a wild look, he says their numbers are overwhelming. With a punch, he defeats one of the wolves, showing his strength. Inside the wolf, he finds a glowing purple magic stone. With the stone in hand, he says his stamina will be limitless. Eating the stone, his body fills with veins and immense power. With his new strength, he continues the battle, fascinating his enemies. Even while controlling himself, his body moves on its own in the fight. With wild instincts, he blocks attacks and devours his enemies. With a scream, he reaches enlightenment and a new power awakens. Upon gaining the wild instinct ability, his eyes shine. Defeating the wolves, the hooded figures call him a monster. They fear that he might escape the siege. With a shout, the leader orders all summoning circles to be activated. With no choice, he decides to reveal his trump cards ahead of time. He orders them to free those two. Laughing, Harley says he likes the beastly fighting style of the wolves. With his axe in hand, he prepares to finish the fight. Suddenly, a crystal arrow hits him, surprising him. Shocked, he doesn't understand what struck him in the middle of the battle. Looking at the sky, he sees several crystal arrows coming his way. A crystal hand holds one of the arrows, ready to attack. Seeing himself in the reflection, Harley wonders what kind of power that is. A crystal man emerges, emanating immense telekinetic power. Suddenly, a red demon falls from the sky, frightening Cecily. With a smile, the demon says he won't be able to move. Shocked, Harley can't believe that even demons are there. With a smile, he says that brute force won't defeat him, and so he prepares to face them. The man throws another arrow, hitting Harley in the chest. Meanwhile, the other monster punches the poor guy right in the face. Already preparing for another blow, the demon tells him to give up the battle. And with fire in one of his hands, the demon says he will end him now. But excited, Harley says they will be the ones eliminated. Suddenly, a golden light bursts from him, leaving the enemies confused. It falls with force, causing a great explosion. With a smile, he says that help has arrived just in time. With his shining armor, Heinrich appears to save the day. Returning to the palace, a knight questions the holiness for trusting an uncertain feeling. Irritated, she says that Sir Heinrich is someone they can trust. With conviction, she states that even the divine has taken an interest in him. Rafferty stands up, saying it doesn't matter if it's a revelation or a hunch. With determination, he asks Heinrich to guide them to the child. The scene shifts to the mountain with that great explosion. With his sword, Heinrich charges at the red demon. With a strike of light, he attacks the monster with his holy sword. The demon is thrown far away, surprised by the knight's strength. Impressed, he can't believe in the divine power and Heinrich's abilities. The crystal man realizes that the knight's power is not normal. Suddenly, Harley lands a punch on the crystal man, distracting him. With crystal spikes, the man defends himself and counterattacks. Harley ends up getting hit, but he manages to hold the enemy's head. He says that will be enough to take revenge for the lost eye. He says this will be his payment. With his hands on his head, the man goes into a panic. In an instant, Harley manages to smash his head. Wounded, he pulls the arrow from his eye, and he says the enemy will replace his lost eye. With the crystal eye in hand, he prepares for the transplant. As he places the eye, he gains the ability Gem Eye. With a smile, he realizes he can now attack from a distance. From afar, the hooded men can't believe in their defeat. Shocked, they wonder who the Holy Knight is. The leader orders his men not to act recklessly. With an escape plan, he orders the remaining monsters to be released. Suddenly, one of the men turns around, startled by something. With a blow, one of the men is hit, surprising everyone. The Holy Order appears, and Heinrich threatens to crush the heretics. Frightened, one of the men asks if they should prepare the teleport to escape. With no way out, Nurabi decides there is no turning back in the battle. With a shout, he prepares to sacrifice the souls of his men. With a summoning spell, he intends to call on Archdeman. A large purple shadow rises from the ground, enveloping the entire area. With his hand transformed, the demon prepares to burn everything. With a scream, he orders the creature to turn everything to ashes. Suddenly, a golden light appears, surprising the leader of the heretics. The divine power of light is so strong that it even frightens the Archdeman. The light hits the demon squarely, injuring him severely with its power. From afar, a priest apologizes but says the heretic will burn. With a scroll in hand, he casts a powerful light spell. Hit by the magic, Nurabi screams in pain, being enveloped by the light. Seeing the explosion, Harley says things seem to be resolved. With a gesture, Harley calls Cecily to come out of hiding. Frightened, she says she felt nauseous with the situation. With a smile, he comforts her, saying that the important thing is for her to be well, while the other avatar observes the two. But a voice calls for Sir Heinrich, interrupting the moment. With a smile, Sir Tuscan says they arrived on time thanks to him. He congratulates Heinrich for being right and asks how he knew. Suddenly, Rafferty runs towards Cecily, shouting her name. Kneeling, he introduces himself as Rafferty from the Elven Kingdom. With a shining gaze, he looks at her, showing his starry pupils. Laughing, Harley says he is glad she has reunited with her people. Grateful, she asks how she could repay his help. With a smile, Rafferty says he is admirable and that he will reward him. He asks Harley to sit down, and Cecily approaches with a smile. With a kiss, she blesses him, and he feels a familiar energy. Rafferty explains that it is a blessing from nature, which only high elves can give. With a smile, Rafferty asks him to extend his hand for the reward. He hands over an elven symbol, promising help whenever he needs it. Laughing, Harley accepts the promise with gratitude and a big smile. Cecily gives him a branch from the world tree as a final gift. Tuscan praises Harley's physique and asks if he and Heinrich know each other. With a smile, the protagonist says they have gained the favor of both kingdoms. With Harley's support, Hubert will become an unbeatable merchant. Rafferty thanks Tuscan for the help and offers to repay it. With a serious look, Tuscan asks him to find the immortal king. The protagonist realizes that the contact with the elves was for this purpose. Rafferty explains that he can feel the energy where there are trees. Pointing, he says he will need help for the search. To track the king, he needs to know the energy of his presence. With a portal, he takes them back to the temple, surprising the avatar. Before the barrier, he is impressed by the sacred power. Walking through a corridor, they are guided by a labyrinth. With a torch, the Inquisitor says they have arrived at their destination. Before a gate, the protagonist thinks that Hans would not be able to enter. As they enter, the knight says the priests would surround them. With a clenched fist, he waits anxiously for the moment. Impressed, Rafferty prepares to track the energy of the fragment. With glowing hands, he says he will track Hans with his power. The protagonist realizes that all forces will be mobilized against him. With a wicked smile, he realizes he has found a way. With the fragment in hand, he plans to take the last piece of the king. In a dark room, the representatives of the challenge vote gather. With a dark aura, the representative of the Empire makes his presence known. Next, the representative from the East also appears at the meeting. With the empty chair, it is revealed that Naradu will not attend because he is dead. One of the members says they still do not know how the order tracked them. With a smile, he questions whether they are not being careless. Another member says the order resurfaced because of the king's hair. With a plan in mind, he suggests using the new hair to their advantage. With a wicked smile, he finds the idea of using the hair interesting. The scene shifts to the holiness who cannot track the energy. With the fragment in hand, Hans realizes she tracked him from there. To hide, he decides to conceal the fragment in a subspace. With a skull portal, he prepares to store the object. With a frustrated look, he realizes that the fragment cannot be stored. Sitting in a building, he thinks about how he returned to Earth with the fragment. With a plan, he decides to create a subspace within his own body. Concentrating his energy, he prepares to become one with the fragment. With a smile, he successfully absorbs the fragment. Now he can absorb the power of the fragment and hide his energy. Satisfied, he says he has solved his biggest problem once and for all. Looking at the laboratory, he prepares to clean the crime scene. With a snap of his fingers, he decides to burn everything to ashes. Amid the flames, he prepares for the next step of his plan. Already outside, he says he will release all barriers. With the smell spreading, he challenges the order to find him. On a mountain, he swears he will get the last fragment of the king. The scene shifts to Rafferty, who finally finds the trail of the king. With his hand on his forehead, he says the immortal king is in the monster forest. With the news, a priest orders to summon all the paladins. Suddenly, a knight appears, offended for not being called. With a smile, Parade, the paladin of Jiran, joins the expedition. Satisfied, the priest says the expedition is made up of the best. With a worried look, the holiness says she will also go with them. The priest forbids her, saying it is not safe for her. With hands on his chest, he says she is the pillar of order. Calling for Heinrich, he assigns him a new mission. With a serious look, he orders him to stay and protect the holiness. Whispering, he asks the avatar to take care of the leader in his absence. Watching the departure, he prepares for his guard mission. With a smile, he promises to keep only the holiness safe. In front of the temple, the knights prepare for battle. With a shout, the priest says that the divinity is watching them. In the skies, a portal of light opens, and the knights get ready. With a worried look, the holiness observes the expedition's departure. He comforts her, saying that everyone will return safely. He explains that he has a feeling everything will turn out fine. The scene shifts to Hans, who is preparing to invade the temple. With his mana, he feels the barriers spread across the walls. Even if he gets through, the internal barriers will still be active. To buy time, he launches a firework attack. Shocked, one of the knights does not understand what is happening. From atop the wall, another knight tells everyone to look down. Seeing the monsters, he shouts that they are under attack and calls for everyone. In the forest, the expedition realizes the situation is problematic. They search for Hans but find nothing in the area. Rafferty says it can't be, as the world tree would warn him. Suddenly, the priest realizes that Hans may have set a trap. With a shout, he orders everyone to return to the temple immediately. With the temple in flames, Hans meets the last fragment. With the energy in hand, he declares that the resurrection of the king has come. With the bell ringing, a knight shouts for everyone to move quickly. Running down the corridor, he warns that the undead are attacking. With a smile, Heinrich wishes the knights good luck in battle. With arms crossed, he says he was assigned to protect the garden. With a plan, he decides to wait for the distraction to sneak in. With a shout, a knight leads the others into battle against the monsters. Surprise, Heinrich notices there are more knights than he expected. With a smile, he says they will be distracted by the attack. Suddenly, an inquisitor warns that the undead are a decoy. He reveals that the hair of the immortal king has already reached the depth. Shocked, Heinrich does not understand how they discovered everything so quickly. Irritated, he advances, saying he needs to prevent a disaster. The scene shifts to a cave, where the knights accompany the holiness. One of them wonders how an intruder got there unnoticed. With a worried look, the holiness questions if they teleported, and deep down, the young woman blames herself for the situation. With tears in her eyes, she wonders what they will do if the king returns. Suddenly, Heinrich appears, apologizing for the delay. With a smile, he says he will take the leave from now on. Happy, the holiness asks him to lend his strength for the battle. The scene shifts to Hans, who is impressed by so many of his skeletons defeated. Looking at an inquisitor, he says they are stronger than they appear. He looks at the Malcolm skeleton on the ground, saying it was not an easy opponent. With a gesture, he commands it to rest in peace. Satisfied, he says he finally got what he wanted. With a shout, he invokes the last legacy of the immortal king. The purple energy condenses, revealing the last fragment. With the fragment in hand, he prepares for the resurrection. With a strange feeling, he does not feel stronger anymore. Suddenly, he realizes that the fragments need time to merge. But at that moment, the expedition arrives at the location and the knights advance. With a smile, Hans prepares to attack the intruders with his magic, and thus, the knights are thrown back by the explosion of energy. Seeing his men injured, a priest prepares to heal them. With glowing hands, he uses his healing magic to help. The healing light is repelled, and the dark magic hits him squarely. Irritated, Heinrich says he will enter the battle to help. The holiness stops him, saying it is not safe for him. With a worried look, she asks him to hold his position. Shocked, he realizes that his plan to fight Hans has been thwarted. With a shout, Hans says the fragment is his and orders everyone to give up. With a sphere of energy, he thinks about exploding everyone there. Suddenly, several swords of light appear, attacking the avatar. With his magic, he defends himself, surprised by the power of the attack. The holiness, with hands in prayer, casts a quick and powerful spell. With regeneration at its maximum, he realizes he cannot prolong the battle. With a surprise attack, he decides to take down the command tower first. Irritated, the priest blocks the attack. Shocked, he realizes they are acting with complete confidence in their victory. With a thoughtful look, he wonders if someone is reading his strategy. Approaching the healer, he wonders where the avatar is looking. With the distraction, the holiness launches a powerful attack against Hans. With a shout, she calls everyone to attack together with full force. Surrounded, he realizes they are trying to prevent him from regenerating. Using his shield, Hans claims it was an obvious trick, and irritated, one of the knights bravely advances. With a disdainful look, the protagonist calls him slow and prepares himself. Suddenly, energy skeletons bind the knight, shocking him. Trapped, he does not understand how the avatar predicted all his movements. He realizes he should have blocked the psychic invasion. Heinrich knew everything because he heard the plan in the priest's mind. The paladin prepares to act, but Hans just laughs. Hans says it is too late, as the fragment inside him has finally fused completely into one. With an evil laugh, he releases an explosion of energy. Shocked, they feel the overwhelming energy of the avatar. In tears, the holiness says they arrived too late. The dark silhouette of the immortal king begins to take shape. He threatens the members of the order, telling them to tremble in fear. The system alerts him that he has surpassed the end and transcended. He declares himself the calamity of the Outerika dimension, the immortal king. Knights rush to the chamber but stop upon seeing the others defeated. Seeing the figure of the immortal king, one of them asks if they arrived too late. Sir Pion says not yet, as the location suppresses the power of the immortal king. With courage, he says they will risk their lives to stop the demon. He orders everyone to advance, and Hans laughs at the knights. The immortal king thinks they are deluded for not seeing his status window. A notification alerts him that he is now invincible with the immortal heart. He says he will show the power of the immortal king to all of them. Covering his face, the immortal king prepares to use a new ability. He activates the Eye of Darkness, and a wave of energy hits the knights. With just a glance, he instills fear and confusion in his opponents. The ability also allows him to control low-level demons, making them enter the bodies of the knights. Sir Pion screams not to look, recognizing the legendary Eye of Darkness. With a blue energy in hand, the immortal king says it is now their turn. He raises his hand and commands his legion of the dead to rise again. Pyre is shocked to see bones and bodies joining around the immortal king. With a blue aura, the skulls unite, and a knight screams for them to be careful. The immortal king creates a corpse golem, frightening the knights. The golem attacks, and one of the men shouts for everyone to dodge the blow. With a punch, the creature crushes one of the knights, who screams in pain. The immortal king calls them pathetic, with a look of disdain. With great sadness, the holiness watches all of this. She composes herself, knowing that the entire continent is in danger. Turning to Heinrich, she calls him, and he responds promptly. She takes off her necklace, saying she will entrust her symbol to him. Handing over the necklace, she asks him to retreat and become stronger. And with the necklace in hand, she tells him to stop the immortal king. The Holiness orders everyone to make way for Heinrich's escape. With a shout, she commands them to protect him with their lives so he can escape. The knights advance, and the immortal king calls them annoying flies. Pyre attacks, but the immortal king says he will finish them all at once. Suddenly, something catches Han's attention. The same knight attacks again, and the king calls him a fool for repeating the same mistake. Pyre says it doesn't matter, as their objective has been achieved. With courage, he says he would sacrifice himself to save Heinrich, their hope. The king calls him a fool and says his wish will be granted. With a cold look, the immortal king prepares to crush Pyre's skull. Suddenly, Heinrich lands a powerful punch on the immortal king's face. The impact of the blow sends the immortal king staggering back with great force. Activating the blessing, leap, Heinrich moves with incredible speed. The knight passes by the immortal king, who turns surprised by the movement. The immortal king stops Heinrich's sword and praises his movements. Saying that the sword is blind, he launches an attack to finish off the knight. Hit. Heinrich coughs, feeling the pain of the energy thorns in his body. With a smile, he feels that the attack pierced only his armor. Amidst the battle, Heinrich prepares for the climax of the fight. In tears, the Holiness asks why he didn't flee. Wounded, he says he didn't join the church to save his own skin. Holding the necklace, he questions how a coward could protect the world. With the necklace shining, he fills himself with sacred power and determination. Facing the immortal king, he asks if his sword seemed blind. With the sword shining, he swears he will defeat him, even if it breaks. Upon gaining the blessing, Sword of Light, he is shocked by the third blessing. With a shout, he charges towards the conclusion of the battle against the king. The protagonist strikes the immortal king squarely with his Sword of Light. The king praises Heinrich's words and prepares for the final blow. Watching the scene, the Holiness despairs at the course of the fight. Holding the sword, the immortal king asks for the name of the church's servant. With a shout, he introduces himself as Heinrich Landguard. The system alerts that immunity with the end of life has been activated. The immortal king says he will remember that one and vanishes using his power. Wounded, Heinrich looks around and wonders if the enemy has fled. Exhausted and out of strength, the protagonist begins to fall to the ground. Pyre holds him, shocked that he has struck the heart of the immortal king. With a smile, he feels the resurrection of the Chosen One. From afar, someone applauds, calling the scene a heroic tale. Han summarizes the perfect rivalry between the hero and the demon king. Back in his room, he says it's time to collect his payment. Seeing the shop, he is shocked to find he has earned almost 1,000,000 points. Without a second thought, he decides to enhance his unique skill. The system informs him that he has acquired the new skill, Customization. Curious, the protagonist taps the screen to see his new skill. Excited, he says that now it really feels like a game. The new Customization skill brought 2 new possibilities. Avatar modification allows changing the appearance and stats of clones. Meanwhile, avatar creation lets one define everything from the start. With a smile, he says the biggest difference is yet to come. Excited, he sees the option to select the gender of the new avatar. He says he has no strange ideas, just going to press it out of curiosity. Surprised, he realizes that the female selection is blocked. He soon notices the option to select a medium to generate related species. Looking at the branch, he remembers the World Tree branch from Cecily. Han comments that he liked the plant, but had no other way. With a smile, he asserts that this would be enough to create an elf. The system detects the World Tree branch and begins to generate the elf. A new elf avatar is born, and he decides to customize it. He transforms the elf's face into something quite beautiful. To finish, he gives it long, slender arms and legs. Excited, Han says that since elves are elementalists, the most important thing is the affinity with nature. So he sets that option to a higher level. The new avatar is named Harris and is called the Son of the World Tree. The protagonist admires the body and beautiful face of the new clone. With disdain in his eyes, Harris comments that the situation is unpleasant. And to say nothing more, the elf covers his mouth. He soon feels that Hans's dark magic is destroying Harris. In panic, he realizes the danger the new avatar is in. Without hesitation, he shouts to cancel Hans's summoning immediately. Relieved, he takes a deep breath, as he almost lost the newly created clone. He decides that, for now, he will store Harris for later use. Picking up a book, he plans to write The Legend of the Mercenary King. Elsewhere, Harley tries on wolf ears and likes the function. As he leaves, he thanks for the service rendered. Arriving in Tarak, he says that Hubert found the right item for him. Harley hears about problems at Hubert's shop and decides to teach a lesson. In the tavern, some men mock his clothes and call the South savage. One of them claims that Southerners are to blame for this bad reputation. Harley stands up and calls the man's attention, who looks frightened. Irritated, he asks who insulted the Southerners, and they quickly point out the culprit. The man threatens with a club, saying he will teach him a lesson. With a swift movement, the protagonist breaks the weapon with his hands. Shocked, the aggressor cannot believe what he just saw. Harley concludes that those men are true warriors of the South. This means he has found exactly what he was looking for. He realizes that he just needs to make friends to become a hero. Thus, he can become a true warrior of the South. A man tells him to dress properly, as that was festival attire. Confused, Harley asks if people no longer dress like that. Irritated, the man calls him a disgrace and says he can't take it anymore. The man challenges him to a traditional Southern duel. With a smile, Harley accepts but imposes a condition. He asks for the three of them to attack him at once, leaving them shocked. Feeling insulted, they accuse him of mocking their honor. The protagonist changes his mind and says that only two can face him. With a smile, he comments that the last one must help the two who will fall. Startled by his confidence, the three prepare to fight. With a single punch, he throws one of the men away. The man accuses him of not being a Southerner for lacking a warrior mark. Unsure of what to say, Harley thinks about how to make up an excuse. He claims to be a warrior from the South, but that there is a story behind it. The scene shifts to a flashback from 20 years ago. Harley recounts a duel to choose the next chief of the tribe. In the story, his father was the best warrior and participated in the duel. With a punch, the father easily won the championship. The chief congratulates him and says that, by tradition, he would grant a wish. Harley's father states that he had already made a decision from the start. To everyone's surprise, he refuses to marry the chief's daughter. Outraged, she calls him outrageous and demands an explanation. He replies that there is a very valid reason for the refusal. The big revelation is that he and the chief's daughter are siblings of red blood. Shocked, she asks her father if he will allow such nonsense. With his hand on his face, the chief apologizes and confirms that it is true. He reveals that she is not his biological daughter, leaving her in shock. Angry, the chief orders the guards to kill the insolent trickster. Harley's mother tells her husband to flee while she distracts the guards. Harley explains that his mother was pregnant and could not fight. His father fought alone to protect them but fell in battle. The mother managed to hide in a cave and raise the child there. And finally, he shares that his mother also passed away recently. He finishes the story and asks if it now makes sense not to have marks. Moved, the three men cry at the heartbreaking story. One of them apologizes and hugs him, calling him a true warrior. The tattooed man cries, saying he never imagined something so sad. With a smile, Harley thinks to himself that his performance was insane. Celebrating, the men raise their cups in toast to their new brother, Harley. One of them asks what brought him so far, and he replies that he has a story. He shares that shortly after losing his mother, he was completely alone. In the rain, standing before a grave, he felt lost with only his body. It was at that moment that someone approached him, not ignoring him like the others. It was Hubert, a young merchant who offered help and became a friend. He recounts that Hubert helped a lot, but now he was being threatened. That's why he decided to travel there, as he could not ignore the one who saved him. Furious, the men declare that an enemy of their brother is an enemy of all. They promise to help, and Harley is moved by the support he receives. Grateful, he hugs them happily with a new and strong friendship. With a smile, he plans to use his new friends against the bandits. His economic plan begins by importing pepper from Earth to that world. In exchange, he intends to sell magical tools on Earth, where they are rare. With the profit, he will use the money to grow even more. One of the men suggests they go to their friend's shop, and Harley agrees. With a smile, he thinks that having subordinates makes life much easier. With the problem resolved, he decides it's time to debut his elf avatar. In front of the Great Rosalia Temple, he greets the gate guards. With a smile, he introduces himself as Harris, a mercenary friend of Harley. He says he came because he heard about the elves and requests an audience with them. The guard examines a poorly drawn letter of introduction from Harley. With confirmation, he recognizes the letter and stares at the visitor. He soon invites him in and guides him to the elves' quarters. Upon arriving, the guard informs him that Lord Raffory has already been notified. Harris enters the room and meets Raffory Granwood. The High Elf invites him to sit, curious about Harley's friend. Seated, the Avatar thinks about how difficult it is to pretend not to know those people. With a curious gaze, he finds the whole situation fascinating. Through the eyes of an elf, he admires the intense brightness of Raffory's eyes. Fascinated, he feels as if he is being drawn in by Raffory's shining eyes. With a cup of tea, the High Elf asks if he is truly a friend of Harley. Upon seeing the bracelet, he confirms the friendship, leaving Harris surprised. The Avatar apologizes, but Raffory replies that he is happy to see another elf wearing that bracelet. He changes the subject and asks what Harris wanted to request. Harris responds that he would like to learn to harness the power of nature. With a serious look, Raffory perceives his natural aptitude. Without a doubt, he sees immense potential in the young elf before him. He invites him to step outside for some fresh air, and Harris agrees. Raffory explains that he will not be able to teach him, as he will be leaving soon. Instead, he invites him to come along to the Elven Kingdom. Surprised, the protagonist is shocked by the unexpected invitation. The Elven Kingdom is the place where the High Elves receive education. Harris asks if he needs qualifications, and Raffery explains that only the children of High Elves can enter. With a smile, Raffery reveals that there is an exception, leaving the Avatar pressured. Raffery explains that the exception is someone with the qualities of a High Elf. He approaches and asks if Harris felt anything when looking into his eyes. Suddenly, the Avatar feels the same strange sensation as before. It's as if he is being pulled and sucked into something. In a mysterious place, he wonders where he is and what it means. He realizes that the energy there is much purer than before. With a smile, he understands that something is truly different. Shocked, he cannot believe what he has seen before him. A leaf floats into the hand of a woman. Upon seeing her, he stares at her from atop the tree. He wonders if she is the goddess of the elves. Looking at the figure in the tree, he imagines if it could be the World Tree. The elf descends from the tree and begins to float towards him, leaving him awkward. Not knowing what to do, he simply watches as she approaches. The elf touches his face, and the protagonist wonders why. With a smile, the goddess continues to gently caress the Avatar's face. Not understanding anything, he wonders why the goddess is doing this. With her hand on his chin, the goddess beckons him closer. With a smile, she invites him to go to the Elven Kingdom. He asks if the leaf was the World Tree and what she said. Not understanding anything, he shouts that he doesn't know what it means. Back in reality, he wonders what the true meaning was. Raffery explains that he felt the presence of the World Tree. Harris recounts that he saw an elf and asks if it was really the World Tree. Raffery says she appeared in a way that would be familiar to him. He soon warns that the World Tree has a special interest in him. Shocked, he remembers that even the divine being had shown interest. Now, even the World Tree is paying attention to him. The scene changes, and a man begins to threaten Hubert in his shop. The man orders him to close the shop and leave the city. Calmly, Hubert apologizes for his rudeness. He says that an excellent tea has just arrived and offers a cup. The thug knocks the cup over, saying that Hubert didn't get the message. He threatens him, ordering him to leave the city or die right there. With a knife in hand, Hubert says that his friends seem to enjoy the tea. Suddenly, the leader of the thugs takes a strong punch to the face. Harley's blow sends him violently out of the shop. The other thugs are shocked, not understanding what happened. Without wasting time, Harley and his friends attack the others. Screams of pain and cries for help echo through the city street. At night in the shop, a toast of celebration takes place. Hubert thanks everyone, saying that the drinks are on him. Luwan comments that after the fight, Harley needs a warrior's crest. To show his, Luwang begins to take off his shirt. He proudly displays the crest marked on his chest. He says that a shaman in Tarak can make one for Harley. With a serious look, Harley grabs Luwang and calls him by name. Harley drags Luwang, saying they need to go see the shaman now. He throws him over his shoulders, ignoring all protests. Elsewhere, a thug threatens a shaman, calling her a witch. The man demands the money for the protection he had requested earlier. She complains that the amount was too high and that she couldn't pay. Irritated, the thug grabs her, asking if she didn't understand. He warns her that he had a bad day and wouldn't accept excuses. He pushes her, shouting for her to find the money. Suddenly, the man turns around, startled by something he sees. With a panicked face, he lets out a scream of pure terror. Harley appears with a smile, ready to end the commotion. With a punch, he knocks out the thug and his henchman. He greets the lady and says he came to make a crest. She asks about the thugs, and he replies that they will leave afterward. Tired of the mess, the shaman invites him to enter the shop. The shaman confirms the request, and Harley asks to make the crest quickly. She warns that the crest drains life force, but he already knew that. Impressed, she says he might even withstand the supreme crest. Excited, Harley asks for the warlord crest, but she refuses. The shaman explains that she doesn't know how to make it, as the technique was lost centuries ago. Harley then asks for the great warrior crest mentioned by Luwan. With a pipe, the shaman says that this is also a problem. He explains that he has few materials and hasn't made one in a long time. The most important thing is that he needs a warrior's creation. For the great warrior's crest, the requirement is even greater. He needs to defeat the ogre that dominates the mountains all by himself. Luwang is startled and asks if she knows what kind of monster an ogre is. He accuses the shaman of wanting to kill his brother, as the monster's head is enormous. With a skull in hand, Harley asks if this is what she was talking about. Shocked, the shaman can't believe he hunted an ogre alone. Laughing, Harley boasts that an ogre is nothing to him. The shaman recognizes him as a warrior but asks him to come back later. She complains about lack of energy, saying she hasn't been eating well. He tells her to leave the food with him, as that's his specialty. When she turns around, she realizes he has already disappeared and hopes he doesn't cause trouble. On the street, the same thug sees him again and gets irritated by his presence. Without hesitation, Harley lands a punch squarely on the man's face. He steps on him, commenting on how they keep running into each other. Harley reveals that they messed with the wrong people by bothering the shaman. The thug is shocked to discover that the lady was the southern shaman. He apologizes, saying he didn't know, but Harley smiles mischievously. The thug begs him to stop, promising not to bother her again. Holding the man, Lu Wang warns him to keep his promise. Lu Wang then approaches Harley and says he has finished what he needed to do. With a smile, Harley says she knew she would find good things there. He announces a barbecue, showing a box full of meat. Lu Wang informs his grandmother that he has just arrived, and she turns around surprised. She is astonished by the food, and Harley explains that it is meat and drink. Curiously, he asks if that is enough to keep her healthy. A smile appears. She thinks he is the age her son would be. Complaining that she can barely chew, she leaves Harley astonished. With a laugh, she decides to try a bit since he made an effort. To everyone's surprise, she devours a large piece of meat, and then she quickly finishes a bottle of wine. Harley comments that he already knew southern women ate well. Satisfied, she finishes everything, leaving the men shocked. With a full belly, she announces that it's time to start the recording. She warns that the process will be painful, heating a needle. Lying on the bed, Harley confidently says he is ready. He claims not to worry, as he is already used to this in bed. She silences him with a doll before he finishes the sentence. The doll, she explains, is for her son to bite during the recording. With the needle, she tries to pierce his skin, but is surprised. The skin is so tough that the needle cannot penetrate. The woman asks for calm, assuring that she has a way. With a fiery aura, she says she will pay for the meat she ate by doing her job. With a shout, she prepares to use all her strength. The shaman declares that she will show what a true tribal shaman can do. The system notifies that he has achieved enlightenment and gained a new skill. He acquires the Chalco's combat symbol, Great Warrior. The protagonist finds the symbol impressive, more efficient than the bio-aura. With the new power, he says he can defeat an augur without difficulties. Suddenly, Lu Wang's grandmother feels unwell, and Harley calls her worriedly. He asks if she is okay, but she tells him not to worry. She explains that she is just tired and will be fine after resting. Lu Wang calls his brother Trevar, saying they have work to do. Harley shouts that the grandmother needs more meat to make the other crest. Irritated, she calls him a stubborn bastard, rolling her eyes. Tired, the shaman asks to be left alone to rest in peace. Elsewhere, Cardinal Payan asks Her Holiness if she still prays for Heinrich. Payan advises her to rest, warning that it could harm her body. She says she can't, as she doesn't forget Heinrich's bravery in battle. Her Holiness remembers Heinrich's face, bandaged and unconscious. Payan states that it was like witnessing the birth of a new hero. She reflects, imagining Heinrich as a hero bathed in light. Suddenly, Heinrich wakes up and says they are flattering him. He thanks Her Holiness for her care, saying his body is fine. Emotional, Her Holiness holds his hand, calling his name. With a smile, she proclaims Heinrich as the new hero of Aldrika. The protagonist smiles to himself, thinking he finally succeeded. Han thinks that the roles of hero and demon king have been defined. On a building, Han says it's time to fulfill the duty of demon king. With a mask, he declares that he will spread his infamy even further. Looking at the city, he comments that he sees the stains of wrongdoers. He positions himself on top of a building, ready to act. Jumping down, he shouts that he will drag them all to hell. The scene shifts to a hospital, where paramedics rush in with a patient. One of the doctors complains that the cursed Haho mask has attacked again. A hand with a purple aura touches one of the injured patients. A young man in a hood analyzes the situation with his powers. He introduces himself as An Sonjin, a dark mage from the agency. Upon seeing the patient, he states that the monster behind the Haho mask is insane. Xianjin explains that dark magic is pure, and the man's soul has been enslaved. With a smile, he says that if he were caught, he would accept that option. With a serious look, he comments that he is nowhere near that level. His superior is shocked, realizing the danger of having such an enemy. Xianjin asserts that he will analyze the curse of the Haho mask. As he touches the patient, he has a terrifying vision of the mask. Terrified, he feels a malignant and oppressive presence. He falls to the ground, gasping, and his leader asks what happened. The leader holds him, questioning what he discovered. With a crazed look, he says he feels like he needs to die now. In his mind, he realizes that the cursed Haho mask saw him. In a panic, Sonjin says that the Haho mask noticed him, and he feels doomed. The leader asks if there is any way to deal with the mask. Xianjin runs to the window, saying that if he dies now, he will go in peace. The leader holds him back and insists that he will be fine, as he is not a villain. Relieved, Xianjin feels better, but is soon called an idiot by his boss. Suddenly, the young man begins to feel strange, as if his body is relaxing. With a scream, he faints and the boss desperately calls for help. Outside, a skeleton watches the scene, saying that the young mage is interesting. He comments that the mage is capable and does not seem to have a malignant aura. The scene shifts to the next day in a residential building. Han realizes that the popularity of his avatar Hans is out of control. He comments that calling him a dark hero could become a problem. With a headache, he thinks about how he will operate from now on. Pensive, he looks to the side and feels a strange presence. Upon opening the door, he finds a mysterious chicken delivery man. Surprised, Han cannot believe who is standing at the door. It was Kang Tae-san, his childhood friend, who greets him with a smile. The scene cuts to the kitchen, with Tae-san entering the apartment. He shows off his police uniform and complains about Han's reaction. With an ironic smile, Han thinks that Tae-san is the last person he wanted to see. Kang Tae-san works in the Criminal Investigation Division of the agency. Han remembers that he is his only childhood friend. While drinking a soda, Tae-san comments that Han seems different. He says it looks like his friend has found a new reason to live. Han agrees, stating that he cannot cling to the past forever. Happy, Tae-san says he has been worried about him all this time. Han comments that it's not so bad, as he has even been going out, and he even thanks him, leaving his friend confused. Han remembers when Tae-san always visited him during tough times. Seeing how he is today, Tae-san says he can finally tell him something. Confused, Han asks what Tae-san means by that. He recalls the reason he joined the criminal division. Tae-san explains that Han was like a son to his parents, who died in the accident. He reveals that the case was the work of the Divine Retribution Society. With a smirk, Han wonders if he overdid it with the clues he left. Tae-san promises to keep him informed but asks for absolute secrecy. Han questions why the agency is hunting the Haho mask. Irritated, Tae-san says he does not understand the pursuit of someone good. Han is happy to see that his friend is on Hans' side. He proposes a toast to the new beginning of Han Seokinen. After drinking, he suggests that Han give up on being a writer. He criticizes the hero and Demon King story, calling it cliché. Han tries to defend it, but Tae-san insists it is embarrassing. He suggests that Hans be short for Hannibal Strauss. Han likes the idea, and Tae-san reinforces that he can ask for help whenever needed. Suddenly, Tae-san receives a call and looks at his phone. He says it is already time and he needs to go, leaving Han surprised. Han calls out to him, and Tae-san stops before leaving the apartment. Before he goes, Han asks if Tae-san's grandmother is doing well. He replies that her condition has worsened and that he needs to prepare. Worried, Han asks if he can do anything to help. Tae-san tells him to focus on writing, that he will figure it out. After he leaves, Han clenches his fists and feels powerless. He remembers Tae-san's grandmother holding his hand. She told him to ask for whatever he wanted, as if he were her grandson. The lady smiled, stating that Tae-san's friend was like a grandson to her. With a smile, young Han happily thanked her for the affection. He fondly remembers how Tae-san's grandmother took care of him. Han feels useless for not being able to help his friend in this difficult moment. Suddenly, a brilliant idea arises and his eyes shine. With a confident smile, he says that Tae-san owes him an apology for mocking him. He claims that the character she teases will help him. To heal a person, someone with the gift of healing, like a priest, is needed. With divine power, Heinrich manages to heal Tae-san's grandmother. Han thinks about how to get Heinrich out of there without raising suspicions. For now, he prefers to wait for the right moment to act. The scene shifts to Diana and her brother. She asks if he is okay, and he replies that he is. Suddenly, the boy loses his balance and drops an apple. A mysterious man steps on the apple, picks it up, and scolds him. The young woman recognizes him and gets excited. Heinz asks how she has been. Her brother doesn't seem to recognize him very well. Diana asks why he took so long to show up. She also says that if he came, it must be because he has some business around. Heinz denies it, saying he came just to see them. She says it's all right and asks him to get straight to the point. Honestly, Heinz admits that he can't defeat the two of them. He asks Diana to be his employer again, wanting her skills. With a radiant smile, Diana accepts Heinz's request. Elsewhere, Jin Saran investigates the places selling the items. Impressed, she asks Heinz where he got such good items. He replies that, thanks to Diana, he obtained tools and information. A man informs that the pepper is in the warehouse and Heinz says he will sell it. He comments that the purge is over, leaving Saran confused by the word. Heinz reveals that he identified and executed all the traitors of the clan. Happy, Saran says that now the clan will be normalized and safe. Heinz says he will count on her to manage heterosis. Worried, Saran wonders if she will be able to maintain the clan alone. He affirms that Jin Saran is a competent person and that he trusts her. With a smile, he encourages her, saying he is sure she will do well. Emotional, Soren feels motivated by her lord's trust. Soren says she can handle everything, and Heinz leaves the place. He laughs, thinking about how he has been using dramatic lines lately. With a serious look, he decides it's time to start conquering the clan. Heinz recounts that with Diana's information he found something. He believes he has discovered the base of the Brokelslack clan. One of the guards wonders why the bonfire went out by itself. Suddenly, the door opens and a vampire thinks it might have been the wind. The scene shifts and a female vampire drinks a glass of red liquid with pleasure. Satisfied, she comments that the drink hit the spot. With her head down, she complains about being very lonely. Suddenly, a voice calls her a drunkard, and she turns around. Heinz appears, unleashes his ability, and says he sees many familiar faces. Rosilika asks who he is, and the protagonist introduces himself. She says she has a bad memory and starts serving more drinks. With a smile, she comments that since he is a guest, she will be hospitable. Heinz declines the fresh liquid drink offered by Rosilika. With a shining eye, he realizes her true intention. Suddenly, he is trapped by a high-level fluid magic. Rosilika attacks him, saying she will not forgive the invasion. With a smile, Heinz uses his own red liquid magic and dominates her. Shocked, she wonders how her own red liquid is attacking her. Trapped, she accuses Heinz of violating the tree with his invasion. He says there is no violation, as he is also of the Brokelslack lineage. She calls him a liar, saying that is impossible. Rosilika remembers hearing about a clan that was hunted in the past. He confirms he is from that clan and asks for her cooperation in exchange for help. With her face being squeezed, she apologizes for the misunderstanding. With a smile and a red aura, Heinz asserts that she cannot refuse. She feels an overwhelming pressure, as if her master has changed. Heinz asks if she can now tell him everything she knows. Rosilika reveals that the true red liquid that governs Tharluria is Lady Frisia. Her main characteristic is being a user of the demon eyes. In a garden, a butler asks Frisia if she is enjoying the human world. Observing the city, she finds the struggle of humans to live interesting. The butler worries about the expansion of the Protestant church in Refelashi. With a smile, Frisia asserts that the kingdom already belongs to Brokelslack. Suddenly, she coughs, sensing a strange presence approaching. A voice calls her, and she turns, surprised by the appearance. Heinz appears, and she comments that she has never seen him before, noticing his power. With his hand stained with red liquid, he assumes she is made of branched red liquid. Frisia looks down on him for being an inferior who dares to challenge her. With red eyes, she swears she will make him kneel immediately. She unleashes her power, but Heinz easily repels her. Shocked, she cannot believe he managed to dodge her demon eye. Heinz reveals that he already knows her ability and knows how to counter it. With a wicked smile, he shows that he is now very powerful. Surprised, Frisia realizes that he is a true red liquid. Angry, she questions him about the purpose of his attack. Smiling, he replies that his goal is quite obvious. He declares that he will take everything she has in Brokelslack. Finding his ambition bold, Frisia says she understands the message. With a smile, she warns him to keep one thing in mind. The vampire reveals that she is also a class of true beings. Surprised by her speed, he is hit in the chest. She taunts him, and he realizes that Frisia is a martial artist. Shocked, he did not expect physical combat from her. With a powerful kick, the vampire throws him away. Spitting red liquid, he confirms that she is a physical fighter. Impressed, she advances to see if he can block more. Her parasol reveals itself to be a sword with impeccable technique. Wounded in the face, she warns him that he cannot dodge forever. With a smile, Frisia warns that her next strike will be the end. A huge explosion of red liquid surrounds him, leaving no escape. Surrounded, he wonders if that was an area skill. Determined, the protagonist advances to cut through the attack head-on. As he passes through, he is surprised to see that Frisia has vanished. Appearing from behind, she hits him with a punch and breaks his neck. With a kick, she throws him far away and laments the boring end of the fight. Rising, he questions her about what she said regarding the end. His neck heals, and he asks who said she gets to decide. To her astonishment, he says that the fight is just beginning. Shocked, she cannot believe her neck healed so quickly. He reveals that he has a special ability called hybrid evolution. The vampire thinks he is insane, as few have survived her attack. With a smile, he admits that she has skills, but also flaws. Confused, Frisia wonders what he means by that. Heinz offers his hand, saying he can make her stronger if she follows him. Furious, she calls him a liar, gripping her parasol tightly. Insulted, she screams that she will pierce him until he cannot get up again. As she attacks, her body stops, and she wonders what is happening. A circle of red liquid magic traps her, and she realizes the trap. With a serious look, Heinz says that if she does not cooperate, he will use force. Trapped, she questions when he prepared the red liquid magic on the ground. He reveals that he is more of a red liquid mage than a fighter. With a crystal in hand, he says he can also do other things. Grabbing her neck, he prepares to use the crystal. He injects the Refelashi crystal into the vampire's neck. With unbearable pain, Frisia screams, feeling the power. He explains that a small dose would not be enough for her. A massive explosion of energy occurs as he steps back. Exhausted and in pain, the vampire falls to the ground, completely defeated. Furious, Frisia asks what he did to her and vows that she will not forgive him. Calling her ungrateful, Heinz says she should be thankful and asks if she does not feel a change. Shocked, she realizes that her senses and strength have evolved to a new level. He asks if she wants to thank him now, and the vampire reluctantly agrees. Suddenly, she tries to attack him, but he holds her back, saying he gave her power. Her punch stops in mid-air, and the protagonist smiles at the situation. Confused, the vampire wonders why her body will not move anymore. She feels as if she is bound by invisible iron chains. Heinz reveals that this is the power of his red liquid domination, and she has no choice anymore. She says that this is impossible, but he confirms that it is not for him. Now in control, he asks Frisia where her clan's lord is. Reluctantly, she says she would not tell, but her mouth betrays her and reveals the location. In a panic, the vampire cannot believe her mouth moved on its own. With a smile, he treats her like a pet, calling her his servant. Stepping back, he thinks that the clan lord must have already sensed his presence. With a confident smile, Heinz says it is time to resolve everything quickly and cleanly. In the mansion of Duke Bright during the night, a voice calls for the lord. Reading in his office, the lord hears Frisia asking to enter and give a report. With a calm look, he allows the vampire to enter the dark room. Frisia comments on the lack of light, but the lord says he does not need it. Changing the subject, he asks what she came to tell him, but he says he noticed it was because of the guest behind her. She is surprised by her master's perception. Hidden in the shadows, Heinz praises the lord of the clan's skill. As he deactivates his concealment, he says it would be a shame if the leader did not notice him. With a disappointed look, the lord presses a button on his desk. Startled, Frisia hears the lord suddenly call her name. With eyes shining with rage, he accuses her of becoming a traitor. Disappointed, the lord tells Frisia that he did not expect that from her. Furious, he accuses her of daring to betray him to serve a new master. Trying to explain herself, she tells Lord Mullo that it is a misunderstanding. He reveals that he sensed the change in the smell of her red liquid after 100 years. With a scream, the lord lunges to attack the traitor with all his fury. Heinz appears and blocks the blow, saying that will not happen. Shocked, Mullo cannot believe his attack was stopped with one hand. With Frisia behind him, Heinz laments having to resolve things this way. Mocking the peace, Mullo creates a sphere of red liquid, irritated by his audacity. The lord activates a magic circle, swearing to cut the tongues of Heinz and the traitor. With the spell, he summons the children of Brokoslak for battle. He orders the red liquid creatures to attack and devour the two traitors. With a strike, Frisia destroys one of the creatures, saying they are not welcome. Strange about the situation, Mullo realizes that only a few were summoned. Seeing the ease of the fight, he wonders if those were all his subordinates. Furious, Mullo asks Frisia what she did with all his subordinates. Apologizing, she drops her parasol to the ground with a thud. Frisia reveals that most of them are now Lord Heinz's subordinates. Not understanding, he questions if they accepted a new red liquid without even resisting. Mullo says that it is no different from eating another of the same species among them. With a serious look, he warns that this kind of act drives them to madness. She explains that it was only possible because Heinz is of a Brokoslak lineage. Finding the story ridiculous, rage takes over the lord of the clan. He activates the red liquid mist, a Brokoslak magic technique. With shining eyes, he commands them to witness his power. The protagonist recognizes the barrier of a red liquid sorcerer. With his head aching, he feels his body become twice as heavy. Mullo says it is too early for surprises, and that his servants always heed his call. Summoning his red liquid weapon, he calls for Obor to respond. Nervous, Frisia lets out a sigh, apprehensive about the situation. A young vampire with a red liquid scythe appears, asking why the lord called him. Confused, Heinz and Frisia look at the scene, not understanding what is happening. With no time for conversation, Lord Mullo orders Obor, his servant, to finish off the two. With a sigh, Obor says he understands and asks for just a moment to prepare. His eyes shine with intense red power as he prepares for the attack. With incredible speed, the young vampire lunges towards them. Our hero realizes that Obor is a very fast, pure-class enemy. The boy attacks Frisia with his scythe, but Heinz manages to block the blow in time. Not wanting to fall behind, he activates his acceleration ability to keep up with the fight. Caught by a red liquid spell, Obor is shocked that Heinz is using magic in the lord's domain. With a scream of fury, the protagonist charges to attack the boss. Irritated, the boy tries to escape, asking if he thinks he can flee from there. Suddenly, Lord Mullo appears, blocking the attack and throwing Heinz away. Fallen on the ground, he laments having lost the chance to attack his main target. With no other choice, he decides to deal with Obor first and activates his acceleration. Mullo cannot believe it. Obor is the fastest of the vampires, and yet Heinz keeps up with his incredible speed. Suddenly, Frisia intercepts Ober's attack. Holding his hair, she says she never liked his attitude. Smiling, she invites him to have fun fighting with her. Mullo is shocked. Frisia is keeping up with Ober's speed. She defeats other servants, and Mullo questions her new power. Heinz approaches and says that the Lord seems to have let his guard down. Calling him a fool, Mullo prepares an attack with red liquid claws. The Lord warns that inside, he can never deviate. But Heinz is not worried about that. Then he reveals that he never planned to do this and lets his arm be cut off. This way he gains access and strikes the enemy. Shocked, the Lord accuses him of throwing his arm away to attack. He denies it, saying he is being economical, and his arm regenerates. Shocked, Lord Mullo does not believe in the instant regeneration of his arm. Holding the wounded Lord, Heinz says he does not plan to kill him, leaving him confused. With a wicked smile, he approaches and says the plan is different. With a shout, he declares that he will inherit the title of Lord. In a dark circular hall, a solitary coffin rests in the center. From inside the coffin, a young vampire with black hair yawns as she wakes up. Sleepy, she complains that she wanted to sleep a little longer. Stretching, she says there is nothing to do. With her eyes open, she feels that something has happened. The vampire concludes that something has happened to her children. In the mansion, a voice orders the next one to step forward. Heinz holds the Raphelashi crystal and commands the vampire to stay still. With a cry of pain, the vampire receives the injection from the crystal. The process continues, and he tells the next one to hurry up. Tired, Heinz complains that the process took an eternity. The avatar asks about the others, and Mullo says everything is already taken care of. But our hero does not like the tone of voice and demands more respect. To irritate him, Heinz says having a lord by his side makes things easier. With a confident look, he thinks his hypothesis was correct. Draining Mullo's red liquid to weaken him, the risk decreased. With a smile, he says he has extracted the source of his red liquid, Brokoslak. The hero remembers how he was bitten and became a vampire. Now he had finally climbed from the bottom to the top of the hierarchy. Sitting in the Lord's chair, the power difference was enormous. Calling for Mullo, the defeated vampire responds reluctantly. He orders Mullo to gather all the remaining Brokoslaks from the continent. Asking for one more thing, Mullo seems quite irritated with the situation. The protagonist commands him to also gather information about the continent. Saying that the method will be up to him, Heinz gives him freedom. Leaving the room, he warns that the task is important and trusts Mullo. Mullo calls him, saying that Frisia told about his plan to become king. Saying that he has already proven his worth, the former lord offers his support. With a confident smile, he replies that he is counting on that. Confused, the avatar wonders if he really said something like that. Heinz thinks he spoke impulsively, but having more servants is good. With a red aura, he accepts the path of the vampire king. Stepping back, he decides it is time to devise a serious plan. Hans snaps his fingers, excited, saying it is now. He begins to customize Hans, sharpening the jaw. Then he adjusts the orbital bones of the avatar. Satisfied, he thinks the new horned look is perfect. Back in his room, he asks if the mission is over. The mission completed screen confirms his total success. Excited, he shouts that it is time to go to the Karma shop. He sees that he has accumulated over 1.3 million points. Curious, he wonders what the improvement will be this time. Without hesitation, he clicks to enhance his unique skill. Suddenly, a blue light envelops him, catching him by surprise. He is shocked to see 2 windows and hopes for 2 improvements. Confused, Han does not understand the new improvement he received. The option to have more avatars has disappeared. Now it only increases potential. Shocked, he shouts that this is not right for 900,000 points. Disappointed, he realizes the new skill called Entity Projection. The protagonist stares at the description of the new skill, curious. Not understanding, he reads that the skill can be used once a day. The ability allows him to project an avatar into his own body. Seeing his avatars, he wonders what that means. Upon seeing the other clones, he finally understands the power. Shocked, he realizes he can use the power of all the clones. Now he can use the power of the avatars in his own body. He looks proudly at all the avatars that appear on the screen. Seeing them all together, a feeling of pride arises along with the thought about the new skill. An idea arises. Using the projection with Hans seems interesting. Excited, he realizes that there could be 2 immortal kings, but thinking better, he decides it is better not to do that because 2 Hans are dangerous. With a smile, the decision is that the first test will be with Heinrich. Upon touching the screen, his body is enveloped by a bright blue aura. With the armor, the feeling is that divine power becomes weaker on Earth. This is to be expected since the projection effect lasts only 10 minutes. With a smile, he says that this time will be more than enough. The scene changes, and the facade of a large hospital at night appears. Using his power, the masked man takes Han inside. After finishing, he creates a jewel for his avatar. He soon approaches someone with very pale hands. Holding her hand, he asks the lady if she remembers him. Han says he wished he could have come earlier, but he couldn't. Promising to come more often, he activates the entity projection. He asks her to hang in there for a little longer. From his chest, a golden light of divine power emerges. The healing light spreads, restoring her energy. With the healing, the lady's expression becomes more serene. Tired, he realizes the limits of divine power with age. He believes this will help and trusts in her willpower. He promises to return with Tayson and asks her to be well. The scene shifts, and Rafori asks if Harris is a friend of Harley. Harris comments that they connected as if they were family. A familiar scent is sensed by Rafori, making Harris nervous. Cecily explains that the scent comes from the branch of the world tree. Rafferty receives it and promises to take good care of Harley's friend. The elven leader of the group smiles, watching the others. Soon after, he suggests they take a short break. Cecily invites Harris to practice spirit techniques. The two elves move away to start training in the forest. With her hands, Cecily invokes a water spirit. Happy, she celebrates her success. Excited, she calls Harris to see the spirit she summoned. She asks why he can't do it, and Harris feels frustrated. He doesn't understand, as his affinity is at its maximum. Rafori approaches, explaining that spirits are companions. He says it's necessary to form a bond with them first. The High Elf advises showing the power of nature. Harris realizes he was doing everything in the wrong order. Concentrated, he releases all his power and affinity with nature. Rafferty is impressed by how quickly Harris learned. With the training, Harris gains the skill spiritual magic. Cecily feels betrayed by him growing so fast. Happy, he says he took another step as a spiritual mage. He touches his new electric spirit and names it Watt. Rafferty says that from now on he will pave the way. He explains that all forests are connected to the mother tree. The High Elves can travel through a path that connects them. Rafferty encourages Cecily, saying she can do it too. Harris walks along a path connected to all the forests. He understands that it is a vast network of natural teleportation. The group walks along the magical trail, impressed by the power. Suddenly, Rafferty announces that they have arrived at their destination. Shocked, Harris wonders if this is the real-world tree. The sight is stunning. The tree is even larger than he thought. Cecily asks if it's his first time seeing the tree. Suddenly, a green aura surrounds Cecily, leaving her confused. She begins to float, and the others shout her name shocked. Rafferty comments that it's Harris' first time witnessing the ceremony. It is the eye-opening ceremony of a High Elf. Harris watches, shocked, as the rare ceremony unfolds before him. With the power of the tree, all things begin to be reborn. A force of nature converges, and a spiritual elf emerges. The elf hands the fruit of the world tree to Cecily. By eating the fruit, Cecily becomes a true High Elf. Harris realizes he can't just stand there watching. He decides he will not waste the natural energy of the place. The protagonist reaches enlightenment and gains the skill Nature Affinity. Happy, he can now strengthen himself by absorbing natural energy. Rafferty calls him, and Harris tries to hide what he was doing. Rafferty tells him to look to the side, and Harris is surprised. A branch from the world tree floats beside him, like a gift. Rafferty says the relic is rare and can become a weapon or accessory. Curious, Harris asks if Rafferty also received a relic. Embarrassed, he thinks about returning his, but Rafferty declines. Rafferty shares that his relic became a ring for his wife. Surprised, Harris finds the High Elf more romantic than he imagined. Next to Rafferty, he realizes that the ceremony has ended. An elf says that Cecily will sleep to stabilize her energy. Relieved, Rafferty comments that he can retire with the new elf. He says he won't retire just yet, and Harris is confused. Shocked, the protagonist can't believe that elves retire. In Drasha, Harris stays at the academy and finds the place different. He expected a peaceful village, but the reality is different. The elves surround him, curious about the continent he came from. An elf comments that she heard the continent is a wild place. Another recalls that humans kidnapped Cecily, calling them evil. Pressed, he says that the continent can be dangerous. He mentions that he had good companions, and an elf is surprised. Irritated by the noise, he bangs on the table to concentrate. Lady Chaperon tells everyone to be quiet, and they apologize. The elves say goodbye to Harris, apologizing for the noise. Relieved, he finally finds a bit of peace and quiet. He thanks them, but Chaperon calls him low class. Irritated, she accuses him of being a mercenary trash from the continent. Not understanding, he wonders why she is so upset. In the capital, Rafferty reports on the Order and the new immortal king. The queen fears that the immortal king will invade their continent. Rafferty says that with Cecily, the queen can retire. The queen agrees that, thanks to her, one worry is gone. She heard that Harris is also remarkable and caught the attention of the tree. Rafferty praises Harris's talent and rapid growth. The queen notices Rafferty's excitement, and he laughs awkwardly. The queen says that Harris will complete his training at the academy. Rafferty asserts that kind-hearted Harris will be of great help. The scene shows the beautiful elven academy under the sunlight. Sitting on a bench, Harris enjoys the day and the blessing of the tree. The fresh air and the singing of the elves leave him completely relaxed. He thinks about giving up everything and living forever as Harris. Suddenly, books are thrown, interrupting his peace. Chaperon wakes him up, telling him not to get drunk with the tree. She calls him an ex-mercenary who doesn't understand common sense. Sensitive elves get intoxicated and lazy with nature. She screams, asking if he is listening, and he wakes up from his trance. She lends him a book so that even a rootless elf can understand. Angrily, she threatens him if the class average drops because of him. After she leaves, he thinks that deep down she is not a bad person. Suddenly, something in the distance catches Harris' attention. He feels the energy of the world tree coming from her ring. He finds it strange that the relic is there and has a strong déjà vu. Harris remembers Rafori saying he gave the relic to his daughter. Totally shocked, he finally understands who she is. Irritated, she questions why her father trusts that idiot. Shocked, he finds the whole situation completely ridiculous. He is surprised to learn that Shapiron is Rafori's daughter. With the book in hand, he decides to study her notes. He realizes that her explanations are very kind. With a smile, he resolves to try summoning the spirits again. He summons 2 spirits, one of fire and another of water. He names the fire spirit Kali and the water spirit Pascal. Now with the trick, he finds the summoning much easier. Even Watt, his first spirit, has leveled up. Happy, he realizes that going to the Elven Kingdom was the right choice. He decides that he will adapt and not cause problems there. He believes that if he avoids Shapiron, everything will be fine, but unfortunately for him, he ends up sitting next to her in class. Not understanding, he wonders how he got involved in this. 10 minutes ago, a teacher talks about the bond with spirits. The teacher reveals that the secret is through dance and music. Bored, he listens about the festival for the new high elf. She says that the evaluation will be on a stage in the capital. He thinks that Cecily might be watching the performance. With a smile, he decides he will show his cooler side. Excited, the teacher announces a group project for Harris. Each group will perform their act for the bond evaluation. He can't believe he ended up in the same group as Shapiron. The other elves introduce themselves as Timer, Coffin, and Curie. Shapiron sighs, saying there is nothing to be done now. She asks if Harris has any dance or music for the group. The others say they have no ideas, which irritates him quite a bit. He remembers that it doesn't have to be a traditional dance or music. With a smile, he thanks everyone for their consideration. He says he remembered a song he used to sing in his homeland. He comments that it is a song his parents loved very much. Shapiron asks if he is confident, and he confirms. With a smile, he boasts about his high scores in karaoke. With her arms crossed, Shapiron watches with suspicion. She looks down on him, saying that a mercenary doesn't understand music. He feels uncomfortable with her disdainful looks. Angrily, she challenges him to prove his worth, and he accepts. Surprised, she stares at him, not understanding his condition. He asks her to teach him about Elven culture if they succeed. Reluctantly, she agrees to the condition if they have good results. The group starts rehearsing the song, singing in harmony. With his eyes closed, Harris sings the song with emotion. With the practice, he gains the skill melody of harmony. Curious, he wonders about the power of the new ability. Satisfied, he feels that his voice is more stable and powerful. The other elves are impressed with Harris' music. With a flushed face, Shapiron finds the music ridiculous. Her spirit reacts to the music, dancing happily beside her. She wonders if her spirits like the music of an outsider. One of the elves teases her, and she denies having danced to the music. Suddenly, Harris realizes that his spirits are evolving. Kali and Pascal evolve into low-ranking spirits. Satisfied, he celebrates the evolution of his other spirits. Suddenly, a green energy surrounds him, leaving him confused. Shocked, the others wonder if it is a sound spirit. The energy condenses in his hands, forming a new being. A purple creature emerges, manifesting physically. The others are stunned, as a manifested spirit is very rare. With a smile, he prepares to name his new spirit. He names the sound spirit Decibel, as it floats joyfully. Impressed, he celebrates having obtained a rare spirit. He remembers that manifested spirits can undertake many missions. One of the elves is impressed by the song that touches the heart. Excited, the others agree to present that song. With a smile, he asks Lady Shapiron for her opinion. Reluctantly, she agrees with the choice of music for the festival. Excited, he prepares to plan the presentation with the group. Embarrassed, Shapiron calls him to talk about something. She asks him to teach her to play the instrument, finding it interesting. With a smile, he agrees to teach her, and she feels shy. The four elves begin to discuss the division of the music parts. The scene shifts to a large amphitheater full of elves. Rafferty confirms with Cecily that Shapiron is in Harris' group. Cecily asks if he is nervous about his daughter's performance. Laughing, he realizes that Rafferty is actually very nervous. Cecily announces the presentation of the music prepared by Harris. The spirits join the music, playing along with the band. The other elves play their instruments with enthusiasm. With a smile, Harris leads the band with his instrument. Rafferty and Cecily are shocked by the infectious music. Shapiron sings, saying that the spirits will guide them. Cecily is moved by the music, finding the tone beautiful. With a smile, Shapiron sings about finding the miracle. Surprised, Harris cannot believe Shapiron's happy expression. One of the elf women is impressed. saying that the music is amazing. Another elf praises the music, even with her sensitive ears. Cecily calls for Rafori, excited about the performance. Rafori praises the use of spirits in the band's presentation. Suddenly, Cecily realizes that Rafori has disappeared from her side. Proudly, Rafori points to Shapiron, shouting that she is his daughter. Harris sings about embarking on a new light without fear. He thinks about how Shapiron helped in the stage production. Together, they sing, and he notices how much fun she is having. The two dance to the rhythm of the music, playing their instruments. Curie and Timer play the drums with big smiles on their faces. The whole band performs with great energy on stage. The crowd applauds and shouts for an encore, loving the show. Shapiron is shocked by how immersed she became in the music. Harris's skill affects Shapiron, proving that it works on her. She sees her father in the audience and realizes he was watching her. Harris asks Shapiron what she thought of the performance. Bowing, she admits that she judged him wrong all along. She apologizes for being mean and says she lost the bet. Rafori finds it amazing the impact the music had on everyone. He believes that Harris will have a great impact on the Elven Kingdom. The scene shifts to the Great Temple, where the Holiness is working. Upon hearing Heinrich, she stands up and greets him excitedly. With a serious face, he enters the room at the Holiness's request. She welcomes him, but he pretends not to see the book about her and the hero. She invites him to sit and says she has something important to discuss. With a smile, she asks if he has heard of the Holy Sword. He thinks of the strongest weapon from fantasy stories. Embarrassed, he says he knows it is the hero's traditional weapon. She reveals that a decree has been approved by everyone in the church. The Holiness asks Sir Heinrich to challenge the test of the Holy Sword. On the outside, he is serious, but inside he celebrates the chance. She explains that the meeting was rushed because of the immortal king. The test will be at the Great Temple Pickhole in the west of the continent. The location belonged to the Salb Empire, destroyed by the second king. The temple is in Lesk, the southernmost kingdom of the Alliance. The temple was built where the second immortal king was subdued. The Holiness says that the hero could not remove the heart. The hero purified the land with the sword for his successor. He fears breaking the seal, but she says that 300 years have passed. Therefore, she says it is time to inherit the hero's weapon. With a smile, Heinrich tells her to leave everything to him. Our hero asks when he should depart. With a radiant smile, she says he should go right now. Arriving at the temple, he admires the grandeur of the place. The Great Pickle Temple has a very different vibe from Rosilia. A priest recognizes him as Sir Heinrich, and he greets him. Surprised, he wonders about the size of the man's body. The man introduces himself as Donovan and thanks him for the visit. He says that Heinrich is trustworthy, but he grips him tightly. Donovan remembers the Holiness, who used to call him Worm. With a serious look, he approaches, ready to be honest. Donovan threatens him, saying he won't let anyone get close to her. Embarrassed, he changes the subject, returning to the Holy Sword. Before anything, Donovan says he needs to tell him something. He warns that the test only happens once a year and many have failed. Confident, Heinrich tells him not to worry about anything. Donovan is impressed by the young man's faith, seeing him as a hero. With his hands in prayer, Heinrich thanks the divinity. He asks the divinity for help, believing in its power. Donovan guides him through the temple, which seems quite deep. Heinrich says that the Holiness informed him about the test. The priest explains that he cannot get advice as each test is unique. In front of the gate, Donovan warns him that this is his last chance to turn back. Confident, he swears he will retrieve the Holy Sword without fail. Donovan smiles, finding the young man's confidence impressive. As he enters, the test begins, and Donovan wishes him good luck. Walking towards the light, the first test of the Holy Sword begins. Even knowing that the tests are different, he feels anxious. The test is to reach the destination within a time limit. He realizes he needs to choose between two identical paths. With a smile, he crouches down, ready to start the test. Activating the blessing. Leap, he says it will be a battle of speed. Using his ability, he feels that something is wrong with the path. Running, he notices he still cannot see the end of the path. The vague objective of the test leaves him confused and unsure of what to do. He remembers the Holiness saying that each test is different. In a flashback, he wonders if the test reflects divine will. The Holiness explains that the divinity gives tests they can overcome. He understands that the test is not just about reaching the end. With clenched fists, he realizes that the test will push him to his limits. To conserve energy, he decides that jumping is not the most efficient. With a smile, he decides he will hop like a rabbit to tire himself out. Laughing, he feels as if he is back in military service again. After 40 days, he finally completes the first test. Exhausted, he thinks the time is a great exaggeration. He realizes that time there passes differently than in the outside world. On Earth, the ratio is 100-1, a significant difference in time. Exhausted, he decides he will abandon the test, having no more strength. He says that the test also tested his mental strength. As he opens the door, a golden light suddenly hits him. Surprised, he realizes that his body has been fully restored. He feels that, after recovering, he has become even stronger. Suddenly, Han notices the great advantage of the time difference. Excited, he decides to train for another 10 days before leaving. The scene shifts to two hooded figures talking about a body. Throwing the lifeless body, he says that soon the entire continent will be engulfed in darkness. He believes that with the immortal king, his plan has become even easier. With a big smile, he says he is ready for the abyss to open. And now with dark power, he raises his hand along with his companion. And finally, they say that everything is for the oath that defies the heavens. Returning to the test, Heinrich prepares for the second. Surprised, he realizes that the place seems to be a chapel. Walking through the space, he confirms that he is indeed in a chapel. With his hand on his neck, he thinks about what the test might ask. The notification informs him that the second test is to pray to the divinity. Confused, he does not understand the reason for having to pray for the test. On his knees, he realizes that it is a test of faith and divine power. With his power, he believes it will be a free pass for him. He just needs to fill the symbol with his divine power. With a smile, he prepares to show his strength. In front of a cross, he positions himself to begin the prayer. Unsucceeding, he activates his mental core and persona abilities. With the strength of all avatars, he converts everything into faith. His eyes shine with power, but he still feels it is not enough. With one last step, he prepares to finish the test. To conclude, he adds the power of his own body. With an explosion of golden light, he envelops himself in power. With this strength, he gains the skill blessing, amplification. The divine power calms, and the amount he can use increases. With his hands glowing, he feels almost at the level of an archbishop. A notification alerts him that he has passed the second test. With a smile, he walks towards the door of the next stage. Satisfied, he celebrates that everything is going well. Walk towards the light, ready to continue the test. Confused, the new challenge asks to eliminate an enemy. Suddenly, a dark figure floats in the dark sky. He finds the figure familiar, but cannot remember where he saw it. The dark silhouette hovers above him, watching closely. The figure reveals itself to be an arch-lich, servant of the ancient immortal king. With red eyes, the lich questions how he arrived there. The protagonist recognizes the skeleton's appearance as that of Hans before awakening. With a smile, he understands that the test is indeed well thought out. Impatient, the lich strikes his staff hard against the ground. Shouting for the church dog to die, he summons the undead. Irritated, Heinrich wonders if he will have to fight against an army. But he soon realizes that this reaction was what the creator wanted. Laughing, he says that, unfortunately, he will not fall into the trap. Confused, the lich wonders why he is talking to himself. Angrily, he declares that his confusion ends right there. The lich commands his minions to attack, but Heinrich deflects them. With quick movements, he dodges all the attacks. He continues to evade, showcasing his agility in battle. Shocked, the lich cannot believe he dodged all the attacks. He orders his minions to crush him at once. Confident, the avatar states that his ability is not just to dodge. With a golden glow, he prepares to strike with his sword. The lich questions his power, and he mocks the undead's fear. Irritated, the lich says he is glad to be able to use all his power. With a purple aura, he announces that the battle ends there. Showing a wicked smile, he summons skulls for the final attack. Confident, the protagonist prepares to block the attack. With a single strike, he destroys all the lich's skulls. Waiting for the next move, he stares at the enemy with a smirk. Shocked, the skeleton cannot believe he predicted all his tactics. Thus, the skull points its sword at him, preparing to fight. And finally, the avatar points his sword at the enemy. Henrop says that his instructor is Hans, the greatest among the world of darkness. The lich mocks the avatar, curious to know how long he will keep talking. With a large magic circle, the lich challenges him to dodge the next attack. Surprised, the protagonist faces the powerful purple magic forming in the sky. A rain of lightning falls with full force, causing a massive explosion. Amidst the purple smoke, the skeleton laughs at the situation. In laughter, the creature bids farewell to the night, certain that his secret technique has won. Heinrich asks if that was the final blow, leaving the lich shocked by the audacity. Not believing it, the enemy realizes that the protagonist is still alive. With a smile, he says that the attack did not hit him. Incredulous, the lich asserts that it is impossible to block his ability that way. He admits that it is difficult to block the attack, even with the type advantage. But with Hans's knowledge, he sees the weakness of all dark magic. With a surprise attack, he pierces the lich with his sword, catching him off guard. Screaming that it is the end, he finishes the lich with a powerful sword strike. The place becomes illuminated with power. Even defeated, the lich claims that as long as the core remains intact, he will continue to stand. He swears that he will resurrect again and again, no matter what happens. The lich's core threatens that the Holy Knight will know hell when he returns. Filled with hatred, he promises that he will make the order pay for the disgrace he suffered. With a smile, the protagonist appears behind the core. He mocks the Lich, saying that he noticed the dark magic and waited for the right moment to act. Saying goodbye, he destroys the core with a single powerful sword strike. A notification informs that the third test has been completed and that he must go to the gate. With a smile, he states that defeating monsters and earning rewards is the right path. Before the gate, he prepares for the next challenge, ready for whatever comes. After the victory, the protagonist walks through a grand hall where the holy sword awaits him. A notification instructs him to pull the sword and be recognized as the master. With a serious look, Heinrich prepares for the challenge. He grips the sword's hilt firmly, ready for the final test. As he pulls the weapon, an immense golden energy explodes from his body. Surprised, he feels a continuous flow of power entering him. He realizes he has seen the battle records of previous heroes. The knowledge of all who wielded the sword flows into his mind. Activating the mental core, he resists the emotions of the ancient heroes. With a shout, he commands the sword to come out at once. The sword flies into his hand, and he calls it his partner, gaining illumination. With a smile, he celebrates receiving the blessing of the holy sword. Surprised, he notices a glowing stigma on the palm of his hand. Holding the sword, he notes that it is charged with power. With a smile, he understands that the stigma allows him to wield the sword. His combat skills unite in the new Holy War of Logia. The protagonist tests the new battle techniques he has learned. Excited, he realizes he has become stronger and his movements sharper. Finally, he informs the Holiness that he has recovered the holy sword. On a mountain, the immortal king asks the name of a wizard. Kneeling and afraid, the man replies that his name is Victor Nolan. Hans introduces himself as Hannibal Strauss, and Victor pleads for his life. The immortal king states that he only wishes to recruit and activates the Eye of Darkness. Suddenly, Hans feels a strange presence and is taken aback. Looking out the window, Victor asks if something is wrong. The immortal king reveals that sacrifice rituals have occurred in various places. Victor gets angry as they acted without his master's permission. When questioned about what he will do, the immortal king unleashes his power. With glowing eyes, he says he will hear the reasons personally. In a secret location, dark wizards perform a grand ritual. With a smile, the leader asserts that the 30-year plan is going well. He shouts that their sacrifices will finally be rewarded. Suddenly, the magic circle begins to unravel. One of the wizards laments that the spell could not be completed. Determined, the leader says he cannot stop and holds a necklace. With a scream, he offers himself as the final sacrifice for the ritual. A great column of dark energy explodes from his body. Another wizard observes, saying that he has finally embraced madness. He claims he will remember the man as the greatest he has ever known. With a smile, he promises that the world will fall into ruins. An immense tower of dark energy rises at the sight. Far away, Hans senses that something unbelievable has happened. The immortal king reveals that the abyss is opening after 1,000 years. Worried, he admits that he never considered a variable like this. The immortal king says that when he found them, it was already too late. Angrily, Hans decides it is time to settle the score with them. Suddenly, his body reacts with dark and powerful energy. Voices of hatred and revenge echo in his mind. They scream to drown the continent in destruction and erase all life. The protagonist realizes that they are the voices of the ancient immortal kings. A shadow of an ancient king appears and questions what he is doing. The ancient king invites him to join and cover the world with darkness. Hans challenges him, saying that a ghost cannot give him orders. With disdain, he asserts that he has no intention of obeying the loser. The ancient king begins to laugh sinisterly at his audacity. Surprised, the ancient king says that Hans has freed himself from the will of darkness. And angrily, the king laments that they are still trapped by it. Confused, the protagonist reflects on the word trapped. Holding his heart, he understands that the impurity he felt was their resentment. Crying out for liberation, the ancient kings plead with the new immortal king. In the end, he understands that they are trapped by the emotion of the end of everything. Telling them to be silent, he promises to grant their wish and erase them. In exchange, the ancient king offers a gift he could never have. Confused, the protagonist wonders what that gift could be. Determined, he activates his persona ability to uncover the truth. With the persona, he focuses on the emotions trapped in his heart. Using his power, he begins to expel the thoughts from his body. Seeing the ancient king disappear, Hans bids farewell with a goodbye. Floating, he calls the ancient king's pathetic predecessors. Symbols float to his hand, and he admits it is a good gift. Surprised, he discovers that the gift was the legacy of the ancient immortal kings. The first king destroyed half a continent, and the second, an empire. For this, they relied on a great army of followers. Many escaped the order and chose a method to survive. Their method was to seal themselves at the edge of the feared abyss. With a serious look, he realizes that the first legacy has returned. Back at the test, Heinrich turns around, feeling something strange. From the cracks, the royal guard Dwell McCain resurfaces from the shadows. Irritated, he breaks the chains, cursing the members of the order. Confused, Heinrich stares at him, not understanding the situation. With a smile, he asks if they have not met before. Touching his head, he says he has just come back to life as well. From his chest, a blue crystal, his source of power, is extracted. With the crystal, he understands that the source was trapped between the sword and the abyss. Holding the item, he thinks that he would normally destroy it, but hesitates. He decides to be merciful and hands the crystal to his other avatar, Hans. With a smile, he tells the skeleton to serve well his new master. Hans arrives at the location where the ritual took place. With a serious look, he analyzes the destruction around him. He realizes that the enemies have fled, but the source of the abyss was left behind. Looking at the sky, he sees the enormous hole they opened. Suddenly, a small object on the ground catches his attention. He picks up a piece of metal but decides to keep it for now. Feeling the madness of the abyss, he realizes the great impact this will have. With the eye of darkness, he analyzes the dark energy of the place. He understands the origin of the magic and believes he can control it. Determined, he focuses all his power to absorb the energy. With a scream, he absorbs the immense dark energy of the abyss. With a smile, he feels the energy coursing through his entire body. The energy of the abyss clings to his heart and bones. Feeling stronger, he thanks the enemies for the great favor. Suddenly, he turns around, surprised by something he felt in the air. From the cracks in the ground, dark energy begins to emerge. A skeleton rises from the cracks, and Hans watches attentively. The creature reveals itself to be the bone dragon Entrazio. Impressed, he finds the creature magnificent. With a roar, the bone dragon prepares to attack. With shining eyes, Hans asks if it does not recognize its master. The dragon's eyes change color, recognizing its new master. With its head lowered, the creature submits to Hans's command. Petting it, he says that the dragon is cute like a pet. He realizes that this is not the end of the immortal king's legacy. Remembering the army, he says he is eager for what is to come. Suddenly, the immortal king feels a presence approaching. He asks the dragon if it also sensed their approach. In the distance, knights are approaching, and Hans calls them envious. Worried, he says that this is a bad time to encounter the divine order. Comparing it to a new car, the immortal king says he needs to test the new power. With the abyss open and the dragon, he sees a chance to gain a lot of karma. Riding the bone dragon, he decides to seize the opportunity. He tells the creature, which has suffered for a long time, to fly freely. With its wings spread, the dragon prepares to show its power. On horseback, the divine order hurries, sensing the energy of the abyss. The leader says that, since they are few, they need to prepare for the worst. Suddenly, the sky darkens, and they wonder if it is because of the abyss. Realizing the danger, the leader shouts for everyone to prepare for battle. In the sky, they spot the bone dragon with the immortal king on its back. With a look of disdain, Hans asks what the servants of the order are doing there. The leader says they came because the abyss has opened, and Hans just observes. Irritated, the man asks what the immortal king intends to do about it. He shouts that tens of thousands were sacrificed to open the abyss. Shocked, Hans realizes that the challenge vow is crazier than he thought. Thus, he says that the damage from the abyss to the continent will be unimaginable. The man blames him for everything, but Hans denies it, thinking he is also curious. With a wicked smile, he decides that he needs to fulfill his role as a villain. Mounted on the dragon, he boasts, asking who else would do that. A knight shouts that he will judge him, ready for battle. He tells the order's hounds not to get excited as he came to give a warning. The knight charges, shouting that he will silence him. Archbishop Ladius shouts for everyone to stop, leaving the knight confused. He asks if no one noticed that Hans is keeping his distance in the sky. The leader says that the immortal king does not want a peaceful conversation with them. Ladius shouts that this is clearly a trap, making Hans nervous. Ladius yells, asking what warning the master of the abyss could give. With a smile, Hans replies that the warning is for Heinrich, who pierced his heart. Confused, the knights question the meaning of this warning. With an evil laugh, Hans says that perhaps the sky is helping him. With a confident look, the immortal king declares his victory. Shocked, Ladius asks if the warning is for Heinrich, and Hans confirms. He acknowledges Heinrich's power and promises to kill him next time. A knight becomes furious at the blasphemy and prepares to attack. For the climax, Hans decides to highlight the name of Heinrich and his own. Telling everyone to stop, he asserts that each one also has their role to fulfill. He orders the dragon to show its strength, and Ladius shouts for everyone to defend themselves. Desperate, the archbishop prepares for the attack. With the knights, he prays, saying that faith will overcome all evil. The dragon's breath hits the barrier of light raised by the knights. With effort, the leader of the knights shouts for them to withstand the attack. One of them warns the archbishop that they won't hold out for long. With great effort, Ladius maintains the barrier of light against the dark attack. Relieved, the other priests celebrate having survived the attack. Ladius shouts for everyone to stay alert, but a knight warns that the immortal king has vanished. With the sky opening up, They realize that the immortal king has indeed disappeared, leaving everyone confused. Irritated, a knight says that the immortal king thought he could defeat them with a single breath. He continues, stating that they have been underestimated, while Ladius remains silent, deep in thought. Worried, the archbishop wonders what the immortal king's evil plan will be. Far away, Hans praises the dragon in Trazio, saying that its smoke was very well done. He pets the dragon, happy that they have gained a bad reputation without harming innocents. Satisfied, the immortal king declares that his play has been yet another great success. Suddenly, the protagonist feels that another legacy of the ancient kings has just awakened. In a distant forest, a dark energy begins to manifest strongly. From the shadows, skeletons rise from the ground, ready for battle. One of the skeletons senses the aura of its companions spread across the continent. A headless Dullahan knight orders all troops to advance. In the kingdom of Charlotte, a dark energy emerges, frightening the guards. Seeing the abyss open, one of the men shouts for everyone to run and save themselves. Surrounded by skeletons, the leader laments having misjudged the situation. Seeing enemies everywhere, he realizes they are encircled. Shocked, he cannot believe that the undead could possess such intelligence. Suddenly, one of his men screams in pain, surprising the leader. Seeing the undead move in perfect harmony, he despairs. One of the men begs for help, being grabbed by a monster. The monster throws him away, demonstrating strength and cruelty. Desperate, one of the guards says they need to inform the Viscount. The leader announces that the Knight of Destruction has resurrected in their kingdom. Elsewhere, Heinz asks about the current situation on the continent. A servant informs him that the abyss is opening and summoning armies of the undead. To their relief, the kingdom of Talia and the neighboring nations have not suffered major damage. Heinz concludes that their region is safe because Hans is taking care of the undead. The servant asks Heinz if there is anything that worries him, but he remains silent. He inquires about the madness of the abyss and discovers that no one knows exactly what it is. The servant reports that there has been an increase in fights over trivial matters, possibly due to the madness. Finding it exaggerated, Heinz says that perhaps everyone is just nervous about the situation. The servant asks how he can be so sure, looking at him seriously. And thus the report continues, explaining that it is not just humans who are acting strangely. He reveals that even the movements of monsters have been reported as unusual and more aggressive.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.